our presenter, who will be, I'm having some feedback here, sorry, who will be presenting information on the big screen and on the phone. So while she is patiently waiting for us to get started, let's go ahead and start with her contribution to the meeting this morning. Mrs. Ann West, and Jose, I'll let you introduce her.
Ann West is going to discuss the commit project and give us a brief overview of the project, and also she's going to give us details on the pilot project that that is going on right now. I think Texas A&M will be part of the pilot.
Yes. So hello, hi Jose. Hi everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I just want to make sure, is Mr. Caskey in the room?
Yes. Waving.
Yes, he is.
Okay. Hi, Paul. I hope everyone has met Paul. Paul's been working with us for a long, long time, and I'm sure he will be able to provide a really good grounding about this technology and what you've been doing in Texas regarding at least the basic components of what we're doing here. But let's get going with the commit project. Basically, you can go to the next slide, slide 2, and talk to you really bit about a quick overview. Hopefully this will only take a few minutes. Provide you the why, the what, the who, and the next steps, and then open it up for questions. So slide 3 should be entitled For Your Prospects. These are really questions for you. What if you could make it easier for students to actually apply to your school, to make the entire process from getting an SAT, signing up for an SAT, to signing up for an ACT, to going to and applying to your school a lot easier? Wouldn't that be a great thing to be able to do? The other thing is, wouldn't it be great if you could do this while you're actually enhancing your technology brand of your school? And what I mean by that is, we're now dealing with digital natives, folks that have grown up with technology, and they are making it easy for them online to do things, and using a variety of modern methods can actually enhance the brand of your school and their view of your school. So I think this project actually does that. So let's go to slide 4. For you as admissions officers, and that's, I assume the audience in the room are admissions officers. What if you could focus on the admissions process and not on forgotten passwords? In talking to some of my colleagues around the country, there's a lot of issues with respect to managing just the day-to-day access through the admissions process for students that haven't been to your site for a while. They went, they got an account, they signed in, they maybe left the application open, and now they're elsewhere. I realize that you, for the most part, have a common application, but that's across Texas, but somebody has to do that support. Wouldn't that be great if it wasn't you? What if you could reduce your risk for financial aid fraud? I'm sure the Department of Ed would be really interested in that too, but there's obviously, you also support financial aid options in your school. What if you could actually figure out how to reduce that risk? What if you could easily match up third-party test scores like ACT scores or SAT scores with the folks who are applying to your school and not have to worry so much about, do I have the right score match with the right person? And what if you could actually reduce your duplicate records? Wouldn't that be a cool thing? And I'm sure the registrars would love that because, it's not, given the matching issues and so forth, it's not that hard to introduce duplicate records if people, for instance, move in the middle of the process and that address doesn't work anymore. It doesn't match what I'm getting from ACT and what I have from the person I think it is. That's not matching. Well, what if you could know that it matches? And for distance programs, let's go to slide 5. What if you could reduce your FERPA exposure? Right now, these students never come to, in many cases, they never come to campus. You don't really know who they are. They're applying to a program. They're maybe even getting financial aid, but they never show up. How do you know they really are who they say they are? And how do you know you're awarding these academic credentials to the right person? So let's go to slide 6. Well, let's enter now the Common Identity and Trust Collaborative, which we have shortened to COMMIT, and this is just a working title. But it really addresses all of the questions, at least in some way, that I just posed to you. Using this, the services that we're looking to pilot, it'll be easier to apply because it basically enables prospects to have single sign-on across the vendors, higher ed, and in the longer term, we are hoping federal agency services that are involved in the admissions process. So they would have one user ID and password, and they would be able to get to all of the services that are in the Commit Collaborative. And our job in the Commit Collaborative is get all the services you need into it. It's easier to administer, so you don't manage user IDs and passwords anymore. You don't send out any letters to students saying, okay, you signed up for an account, here's your password in paper, and go reset it, and so forth, and there's that whole process you don't have to worry about anymore because all of your authentication is basically outsourced. Why would we have more accurate student records? Well, as part of this, when the student gets the account with the Commit Collaborative, we're going to be assigning them an identifier. So each member of the Commit Collaborative will be using the same basic information, the same basic identifier, or not the same basic identifier, but have the same basic identifier strategy. So when you receive ACT scores, you'll be able to know, oh, that person is the person that just logged in yesterday. Oh, and I see we're getting an ACT score. Because when the person logs into your and connects to your application, they'll be providing you with an identifier, and you'll be able to match those up. And it's higher security. The second aspect, the second phase of what we'll be doing is instituting a digital notary service. What does this mean? Well, this means that the person will be physically identity proofed. Someone will look at them, look at their government-issued ID, and map that then to this credential. So that means that the person coming in with, say, AWEST, AWEST is their login, and you understand them from the Commit Collaborative as being Ann West, is Ann West. So you have a much higher assurance that that person is who they say they are. So let's go to the next slide. Here's an example flow of Paul Prospect now. So you all know this. The person goes to the ACT site. They get an ACT account. They have to go to the College Board. They get an SAT account. They go to Common App. They get another account. They go to another school. They get another account. And, you know, we understand how that's going to work. Let's go to slide 8. So in Commit, what the person will do is they'll go to the College Board account, and College Board will say, you know, we're encouraging you to get a Commit account because it can be used at all these places. It streamlines the interaction, makes it easier for you. The person will then go to the Commit site and get an account, and then the next time they go to College Board, they might log in. Then maybe they have to take an ACT test for another school. They wouldn't even log in because there's single sign-on that handles that interaction, that handoff in the background, and it's all very secure. Again, that's why I have Paul here, so you can look at him and he can give you some background on what's going on in the background. So then they might access, for instance, UT Austin, and again, you know, that's all seamless, and they would show up and they'd say, hi, Paul, in the corner, and they would just start filling in their information. Now, obviously, this only works, for instance, as long as you your session is active. So after a while, it expires. Obviously, you have security wrapped around all of this. but that's a net effect. So go to slide 9, the project participants in commit. And you can see these are the primary groups that'll be involved in commit. Certainly higher education. We're talking with a number of colleagues around higher education for adopting this approach. Financial aid. We're also in discussion with Department of Ed, FSA, and the FAFSA form. They are very interested, and it looks like they're going to be piloting at least FAFSA or their student-based financial aid in common in 2014. So we're looking to try and get them into this collaborative as well. Admissions vendors, we're talking to College Board, ACT, Parchment, Academy One, and in essence, a number of admissions vendors that are associated with PASC. I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. Digital notaries, those will probably be higher education and other organizations around the nation that actually will open up shop and or just add it to the already identity proofing they're doing, and they'll just do that for any walk-in, probably provide a fee, but we'll be putting together a program where campuses can actually provide this for each other. Wouldn't that be great for distance education and other things? And then finally, the standards, trust, and integration partners. These are the technology folks and the data exchange pieces that go on behind the scenes, which really makes the Commit Collaborative go. Slide 10, these are the example partners. These are folks we're working with. Not all of them have totally committed. In fact, we're still in a planning phase. I'll tell you about that a little bit later. But these are the folks that we're working with on an active basis right now. Slide 11, lead partners. The primary conveners of this are the In Common Federation, and basically In Common is in the business of helping folks get their business done through normalizing how we do authentication and authorization to services outside our campus boundaries. Commit also is supported by PESC, which is the Post-Secondary Electronic Standards Council. You probably know them as the keepers of the XML transcript standard and other things. Slide 12. Again, this is just a little bit about In Common because I wasn't sure if you knew this, but in essence, we're working with national and international partners to provide, in essence, an identity network worldwide. We're a nonprofit higher education consortium and actually are run by Internet2. Internet2 runs the research and education backbone, national backbone. So commit phases of development, this is where we are, and there's a long road ahead of us to get to that mountain in the far distance, but basically we're in a comprehensive planning phase right now where we're looking at putting together, we have a prototype, or we're looking to put together the components needed to run a pilot. So that's governance model, participation model, the technology architecture plan, and at the end of this 6 or 8 month period, we'll be doing an RFP and a pilot. Phase 1 is this outsourced authentication I talked to you about, and this identifier mapping across participants in the Commit Collaborative. Phase 2 will be that digital notary service and that improved credential quality, that enhanced identity, assurance of identity for the folks coming in and applying. So this is my last slide. Next steps, decide your interest and level of participation, and if you are interested, we have open calls, and Jose is connected in with those. And also, we do have Texas A&M participating on those calls, too. And I'll just open it up for questions.
I have, this is Cheryl Rich, Texas A&M, so we might already know this somewhere, but the example that was given had a point of entry for a single sign-on coming, and you might have addressed this and I missed it, coming in from SAT.
So SAT is all it is I guess you could say it's advertising the commit credential. So if you're participating in this collaborative and they hit your site first, for instance,
and we
Common
would be
App,
the first.
Yeah, first. Then we would encourage you to advertise the commit credential, and the student would go, the prospect would go get a user ID and password from that. When they would come back and log in, they would get redirected to the commit site for the authentication piece. So they would never authenticate on your site. It would always be a redirect to the commit site with your logo on the lower in the right-hand side that says, you're coming from, UT Austin's applications page. Please log in to enter that. But it would also have the commit login screen on there, so they knew, they'd have those visual cues, right, that they're logging into the right place.
Okay.
And then their web browser would be redirected back.
Thank you.
Yep. Now, one of the folks that I've talked to about this is in great detail, and they're participating in the project is Penn State. And, they have about 90,000 applications a year, and about 75,000 of those are online, and they manage accounts for those. And about 60,000 of those people are not accepted. They're not given, they're not an accept. So, they're basically managing 60,000 accounts every year for people who never even get accepted, much less come to the institution. So it's a pretty big amount of work, and I imagine, given the Common App is done Texas-wide, those numbers are pretty breathtaking as well.
Just out of curiosity, and I may have missed this, is SAT signed on as ACT is signed on as well?
College Board and ACT are very active members, and we are.
And they're signed on to the mechanism, correct?
They are participating in these project calls, and so.
But that doesn't mean to me that they have agreed to participate.
That's right, and we are prior to that point.
Okay, so just so I understand, we're still a long way away from being able to implement at this point, right?
That's absolutely correct. Yep.
Okay.
That's absolutely correct.
Thank you.
Yep. I think our first production target is next year about this time.
And could you discuss a little bit about the data sharing between vendors and between agencies?
Yeah, so Commit doesn't really provide any mechanisms for that, except we enable it to happen because of the shared identifier strategy. So in the discussions with the admissions officers and registrar's officers, frankly, they are very interested in getting third-party data tagged with commit identifiers to help with that mapping. And that's all, up to ACT, for instance, and SAT, College Board, to do, although both of them have said it would be very easy to do that, because when the person logs into authenticates to Commit passes that identifier to the service provider or to College Board. So they will have the person's name and identifier added to their database, and they said it's just a case of adding an extra field, frankly, to their reports that they send along. So I'm guessing that's going to be the Commit participants saying, hey, we've got this idea, we've got this ability, let's let's leverage it for some interesting services. So I think one of my slides said commit is not only technology and a way of doing business, certainly with this authentication and the increased confidence in credentials, but it's also a group of people that can come together and leverage this platform for interesting ideas. And I think there's already been a lot of discussion about that, but, we don't want the cart before the horse. We have to scope this down and provide something that we know we can do.
And this is Ethan Logan from Texas Tech University. I thank you for your presentation. Do you have this information available online so that when I go back to my institution and discuss this possible future, that I can direct people to this information?
We have an internal project site that's a wiki, and I can certainly link you there because it lists some of, for instance, the user flows and how that might work for some of your more technical folks. That's probably the best I can do for now. Certainly can share these slides too, or if your folks have more detailed questions, just forward them my way, and we'll see what we can do.
Thank you.
So, Paul, how has UT involved with this? Have y'all implemented any? Thank you. And Cheryl, so A&M signed off on the pilot already, right?
I came in on the tail end. Oh, sorry. I came in on the tail end of that conversation. I had been in another meeting, so I haven't talked to anybody since then. It was interesting, but it sounds like we're very involved.
Yeah, I don't know, since we don't have the pilot actually going yet, Jose, and we haven't, as I mentioned earlier, we don't have the parameters set around the pilot. We don't have anyone hard committed right now for the pilot. So I would say Texas A&M is joining the calls. Susan Nietzsche, I believe, is the person doing that.
Yes.
Okay, and is very interested and engaged. But we haven't identified the actual pilot participants yet. So, but I think when Jose and I were talking about it, thought that A&M might be a good possibility for that, given your admissions process as well as the IT folks that are involved.
Absolutely.
But that would be up to you, obviously.
I'll find out more when I get back.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you very much, and we appreciate your time and your presentation.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks, Ann.
Thank you. Have a great meeting.
We will.
Bye-bye.
All right, we'll move back into the agenda. Thanks for that presentation about the in-common project. It's very interesting. And we'd like to start at the top of the agenda with introductions. Mr. Fuller, would you kick us off?
Sure. Jeff Fuller, Director of Recruitment at the University of Houston.
Megan Wheeler, Associate Director of Admissions at Angelo State University.
Cassandra La Chica at the University of Texas at El Paso, Associate Director of Admissions and Recruitment.
Michael Heinze, Associate Vice President for Enrollment Management and Marketing, Texas State University.
Daryl Hendry, Executive Director of Admissions and Registrar, El Paso Community College.
Matt Hebbard, Director of Admissions and Registrar at South Texas College.
Albert Salinas, Dean of Enrollment, Loretto Community College.
Rita Wilson, Amarillo College, CS Technical Director.
Jeremy Thomas, Director of Admissions and Enrollment Services at Angelina College.
Trey Hadaway, Director of Enrollment Management and Marketing, Kilgore College.
Jeannie Rickey, Director of Student Records, Texas Women's University.
Linda Klug, Director of Admissions and Registrar, Austin Community College.
Tim Bray, Supply Texas.
Cheryl Moon from Texas A&M University at Galveston, Executive Director of Enrollment Services.
Cheryl Rich, Senior Associate Director of Admissions, Texas A&M.
Mary Gooch, Admissions Director, Prairie View A&M University.
Jose Rios, Coordinating Board.
McGregor Stevenson, Coordinating Board.
Ethan Logan, Executive Director for Undergraduate Admissions at Texas Tech University. Welcome, everybody, and to our guests in the gallery. Thank you for being here. Our next item on the agenda is our approval of minutes from our last meeting. I hope that you've had a chance to see the minutes from the last meeting, and I would entertain a motion to accept those minutes unless there's revisions.
I have a couple of just small things. Where at the very top it just lists where people are from, and I'm here representing, although I work at UT Austin, I'm here representing Apply Texas and not UT Austin. There's a bullet on the second page as I look at it. Let me find it, called Transmission of Data, which says St. Edwards is not part of the Apply Texas community. I think it should say now. It meant to be now and not, because it is part of the Apply Texas community. And I think those are the corrections I'd like to have made.
Thank you, Tim. Any other corrections for the minutes?
I move that we accept the minutes.
Second.
Moved and seconded, we accept the minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Moving on, we have been asked to recommend an appointment for a vacant seat for a private institution. There are 20 private institutions who participate in the Apply Texas program and use our Apply Texas application. And of those members, we try to have one of the independent institutions, private institutions, represented on the advisory committee. And at this point, we stand vacant for a private institution. Since we didn't have one nominated externally from the constituency of independent institutions, we were asked as an Apply Texas committee to recommend a nomination for a member to serve as a private institution representative to the committee. And soliciting this group, we have one nomination currently for the spot, Ray Brown from TCU. I'd like to open and extend an invitation to any other nominations from the committee. Otherwise, I'd like to recommend that individual as being invited to participate as a private institution representative. All right, seeing nothing else in the negative, we will move forward with that by affirmation, as long as that's fine with everybody. Very good. We'll make an extension of invitation to Mr. Brown and see if he would like to participate and represent the private institutions to this committee. Our next item on the agenda is our subcommittee updates. We had an opportunity to meet yesterday with people who could be in town to meet as subcommittees. And so we had, I think, a very good day of subcommittee work. And so I'd like to ask each of the representative subcommittee chairs to provide information about their meetings from yesterday and from any consequent days prior to our meeting today. And I would like to follow this in order of the agenda. So I'll start with Mr. Fuller, High School Counselor Suite update.
So we actually used our time and met jointly with the group talking about T-Rex. And the first part of our meeting was really to talk about the High School Counselor Suite. And we really divided it up into, I guess you could say, 3 areas. The first being to really increase and create more of an awareness of the high school counselor reporting suite. At our last meeting, it was sort of mentioned that there are members, even members of this committee, who didn't know about the high school counselor suite. So that allowed us to say, well, let's maybe think about having an opportunity to talk about this. And because if many of our member institutions are not aware of the high school counselor reporting suite, then we're sure probably many high schools are unaware of this as well. So we talked about really that awareness piece and working with the various professional organizations to create that awareness of this. And so working through both THECB and the College Board at their upcoming spring meetings to create that awareness, increase people's knowledge of this. Also working with education service centers from Texas Education Agency and seeing what opportunities could present themselves there through any kind of training opportunities they may be doing for school counselors. I know THECB does some drive-in workshops and looking to see how we can sort of fold that into that work, but also to identify counselors at the local, regional level from the ESCC's databases to try and see if we can get those individuals and really talk to them more specifically, talk to the counselor at each of the schools more specifically. Also mentioning sharing this information on both the TACRO and TACAC listservs because there are just a lot of information out there, and that's how a lot of folks use that. We also talked about the ability, one of the discussions that came up was possibly inviting school counselors to our users meeting that we have. The challenge we had with that is because we meet at the time of year that we do meet, most school counselors are not on contract anymore at their schools, so they may not necessarily want to take time off of their vacation to attend a work-related meeting, but we did think about the opportunity if we wanted to record some of the sessions and some of the information and then provide that as just a web tool for use in the future, as well as just making sure that that folks knew about that. We also talked about I mentioned with both TACAC and then also the Gear Up conference was here in Austin recently and looked at the potential of doing some session proposals at the Gear Up annual meeting to talk about the high school counselor suite. We also mentioned spending some time maybe creating just a really quick introductory PowerPoint about how you get signed up for the counselor suite and who to go to, those kinds of things, and putting that as a PowerPoint on the College for All Texans website. And we're going to get a list of all the current school member counselor usage through the Apply Texas folks. The technical team will provide us that list of current users so that we can find out who's using and who's not using, and then really share that with the committee, but also just make sure that in our conversations that we have with folks that we can say, okay, well, you are a school that's using or you're not, so let's maybe have a conversation about why you're not using and talk about how we could move toward them using that. The next piece of the conversation really talked about collecting information via survey to find out about sort of a usage study to find out why counselors aren't using it, are using it, but more importantly, those that are using it, are they happy with what they're seeing? Would they like to see more? And so we're going to be developing some questions that will go out based on A, are you using the site? And if not, why not? B, if you are using the site, what type of enhancements might you think you would want to see there? With the emergence of the FAFSA information now being on the counselor's portal, the counselor suite, if you will, there's just a richness of data that we want to make sure schools know that's out there so they can find ways to pull it, use it, and help their day-to-day jobs that much more easier. And then the last piece that we talked about really is looking at ways that we could push news and information to school counselors about the high school counselor suite, and you know, just making sure that we can mention to them about being able to go and look at data for their individual schools and just see useful information out there. So and really driving more school counselors to using the site based off of what's there currently and what could possibly be added through the surveying that we do this coming spring semester. So, Mr. Chairman, that's our report.
Thank you very much. Anybody have questions regarding high school Counselor Sweet?
I would just like, if I could just add, thank you, Jeff. I think that was a really good summary of what we talked about. I think, speaking for Apply Texas, I think we certainly support any kind of survey or user feedback is always wonderful. We do some of that ourselves, but it tends to be sort of ad hoc. We have never seen that as one of our main core areas as developers. But I also know as a person with 20 years development experience myself that users can be extremely creative and sometimes will just find workarounds for things that they would like changed without saying anything about it. And so being proactive in this area I think would be really beneficial to us as well as them.
Is this high school counselor suite subcommittee interested in putting together these survey questions for the users?
Yes, that's what we will. The subgroup of that subcommittee will be developing the questions to send out this spring, so that we can determine what aspects of the site are the current users would like, but also just in general, what are some pieces there that we think schools may want to see on that site that would be helpful for them to want to go to the site.
Thank you.
And certainly let me know if you want input from the technical team on that process.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. Jeremy, let's talk about combining app types.
Well, I think I gave the committee a headache yesterday with all the stuff I passed out. Jose, real quick, while I'm thinking about it, can we scan the color-coded stuff in color and send out to the committee? Do y'all have that ability here?
Yes.
Okay, if we could do that, because I didn't bring enough copies for everybody, and I think that's easier to see with it color-coded. What I passed out to the committee yesterday was our attempt to go through 3 of the app types and show how they're linked together. And we broke it down into 3 categories, and then we've already determined one of those categories is unnecessary because it's already corrected online, so I'm going to leave it out of this discussion. But 2 of those is what is the same and what is different. About 2/3 of our applications are duplicated throughout the app types. They're almost exactly the same. And the discussion led to changing how we have students enter our app and how they enter that data through asking the right questions in the right order so that they get to the answer that they really want, not to the answer they didn't know they needed to ask. I can't figure out how to say that, but they don't always know where to go. We used an example yesterday from El Paso with the applications, because they're coming from El Paso Community College and they're trying, they finish your associate's degree, but they're still high school students, so they're trying to use your transfer app. You're doing them by hand, and through doing simple questions, we probably could have fixed that in the first place. So changing the way from beginning to end, the way we do entry, and that includes the way we still have them create the profile at the beginning, but they don't necessarily know they're creating the profile. If you've ever done one of those, you know that even after they create the profile, it turns around and shows them the profile again when they start the first app. That's kind of confusing. It looks like, oh, I made a mistake and it started me over. And kind of streamlining that. And then when they start a new app, another part of the discussion was having it prompt them, we recognize you've used an app before, would you like that information pulled in? So just go ahead and pull that information in instead of having to use the copy feature to copy that stuff over. So the discussion got really large, and they had to kind of follow me through all this. So I apologize to the committee for that, but that's kind of the direction. This is going to be a long-term project, and Ethan, it's, with the possibility of me rotating off the committee and not rotating on, you're going to want to make sure we have someone on the committee with me through the rest of the year that can take that up and run with it, because it's going to span probably a couple of cycles, not just one. Because we're talking about a pretty hefty little reorder and logic and the way we approach the app. The questions aren't going to change. What we're asking is not any different. The information's already there. But the logic and the way we derive the answers may change a little bit in the way we force them to go. The only thing we do want to kind of move on quickly is dealing with our dual credit students. because that population's not being served by our current application. Specifically dealing with residency and are they a U.S. citizen, and of course the affidavit doesn't apply to them because they've yet to graduate from high school, and that's one of the questions. And so that's something we hope to work on this year to get in as soon as we can, so that that population can be served now, not later. And Ethan, I think that was it in a nutshell.
Thank you, Jeremy. We have two items there from the committee. First, moving forward with the basically the flow strategy and dynamics and how that piece works forward. That's mapping the process and the protocol, and that's a continued work from that subcommittee, and I appreciate that very much, and we'll try to make sure that there's no break in transition on that subcommittee. The second one was the dual credit application, which is essentially a new component or a new standalone application in the sense that it's either a module or how we want to approach that technologically. But it's essentially a new application amongst the suite of applications for Apply Texas. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, and Ethan, I don't like the idea of thinking of a new application.
In light of what you just talked about. Yes, I understand that. Yeah.
I think this is a good test subject for us to think about as we're thinking about the logic of the way our app flows, as far as it taking modules and not taking modules. This is sort of a simple version because basically what we're saying is leave things out, and once we determine what those things are, then we move those questions to the beginning, and we add it to the 2-year and probably to the freshman app for the schools that are the 4-year schools who are doing dual credit. Other app types won't be affected, at least at this point, for that one. So this is our test run to see, can we make this flow happen in the first place?
Then let's leave it there and not say it's an introduction of a new application at this point, but perhaps an evolution of what we'll do with existing applications.
And I think if I could respond from the technical side, I'm not real clear exactly what we could do. It would not be difficult to add a field and therefore something in the EDI when it goes out that kind of says this person maybe self-identified as a dual credit. We could perhaps add a question if keyed off of something they may have input that would, and then if that would be fairly simple to just an addition of a question or a field that would under certain conditions appear and say, it looks like maybe you're interested in dual credit. Is this really what you're doing here? And then we could pass that information through. A little more complicated would be, okay, they said that. We asked some questions up front. They said that. Now we want to kind of reformat how their experience of the application, not think of it as a new type, but maybe leave out a couple of questions that would normally be in the transfer app or in the freshman app or whatever. That's more complicated and would take more time to figure out exactly what is it you want left out, what might you want to add, and that would add to the scope of the project. So that's just, I want to give that feedback at this point.
Jeremy, just to add, we are already incorporating dual credit within our application, and we've merged those fields, but it could always be better. So I would like to add myself onto that committee and maybe sit with you, because right now what we're currently doing is we're adding dual credit to the major. And what students are doing is picking up that dual credit, and then our staff is actually, looking at that data, and then, with residency and so forth. But it could always be better. So I would love to sit in that committee.
We actually used to do something similar to that, but the data was always wrong.
Oh.
They didn't self-identify correctly. We even put it at the top. And so we used logic to figure out, graduation date,
right,
that sort of stuff. So we just quit asking. And that's kind of what we're getting at here. We're hoping we don't have to ask based on the questions they're giving us, or the answers they're giving us to key questions. We've identified them for them.
That would be great, because what happens is our staff is just pulling all those applications in, and like you said, using logic to pull them out. So I would love to sit there.
And if the questions are already there, and it's just a matter of looking at answers to several questions and then kind of we identify them as dual credit as a result without asking, that's doable too under the current scheme without too much messing with the app.
And Tim, at its simplest form, they are there.
Okay.
We already asked them, when are you going to graduate high school? And we already asked them, when are you planning to enroll? And if one falls after the other one, we know they're dual credit. And so that's a very, at its simplest form, that's the logic. And the other thing, and it's something Jose is going to have to talk to Jane about, is dealing with the residency questions and making sure that we're not breaking statute on taking questions out that we think are not relevant to that population. And then once we kind of get that feedback, then we'll know what to leave out. But everything else is practically the same, except for that one little form they can't fill out, and we want to make sure that's not an option for them. In theory, we could actually let it run just like it is, as long as we take that little form off for them, at least in the interim.
And the questions that determine this, are they asked fairly early on?
No, but we would have to move them there.
Okay, and that would be something the committee would have to be involved with in moving the questions around as well. But it sounds like most of it is already there to do what you want, and then conditionally leaving something out is generally not a really big deal technologically as well. So it's just to me a matter of what are those questions, what order are they in, is currently too much already being decided by the time they get to that it would be that you'd have to move them around, and then we want the committee involvement and move in that.
Well, as an interim step, just as soon as we get feedback from Jane on what we're allowed to do as far as the citizenship stuff, then we can give you that feedback. And again, this is just an interim step as we're moving all the apps to make changes.
Right.
Good morning. It's Glenn Shelton with TEA. I just joined the call.
Good morning, Glenn, and welcome.
Thank you.
Hey, Glenn.
I'm just going to sit back and wait until my turn.
We won't forget you.
Right.
Ethan, unless there's other questions, that was it for me.
Thank you, Jeremy. Our subcommittee on the FAFSA and testing, Cheryl.
Thank you. This Cheryl. We had a great meeting yesterday. We talked about several things. We can start with the FAFSA. You know, thanks to Jeff, we talked quite a bit about how the FAFSA was going to be a good inclusion with the counselor suite, and everybody that he's talked to that knows about it is, really excited about it. However, we did talk about the additional communication about what's it's capable of and its features and those kinds of things, and how we could do that. And Jose did send out some screenshots this morning and the memo again, so we can share it with the counselors in our area, and that could also get the word out quicker. In addition to that, we talked about taking the profile data for Apply Texas and sharing that or pushing that to the FAFSA database. And so with that, we talked about how we would look at the attributes and look at the fields to be sure that the transition would be good. And so we talked about we wanted to move forward with that. So it was requested that we do a white paper on that area, and Mr. Salinas agreed to start working on that white paper. So that kind of ended up our discussion on the FAFSA. We did talk about the TASFA. We stated that, additional communication was definitely necessary in this area so that we could communicate the process, that they had to do the affidavit, and then that when the form was available and where it was available, since it was kind of difficult to find on the various places on the web. So that was talked about, and different ways to communicate that was talked about. It was suggested that the Apply Texas somehow do some electronic email or message to an applicant when it was deemed that they were eligible for that kind of thing, so for that particular source of funds. So that was talked about. Then we talked about the testing. We were trying to talk about whether or not the SAT, ACT data could be made a repository of the application also, the Apply Texas application, and we made a little bit of progress in that area. Cheryl Rich had contacted the person that we had been working with, And she said, she kind of went back through the process of where we were. And then I kind of went and talked to some other constituents. I talked to the Florida Higher Education Council, and they really don't have much to say. They really aren't involved in it. However, they are in the conversation. I did talk to the SAT. A couple of people over at SAT. They were interested when we were talking about it. They weren't familiar with it, with the concept at all. They aren't doing that with any of the other states. However, they did say they were interested, and they weren't quite sure how that would be configured, because who would pay, who would initiate all those kinds of things. But I just wanted to get the discussion started. She did say that the main reason in Florida, the reason that they have the repository of all the test scores, was because of a statewide kind of scholarship, the Bright Future Scholarship, and that the test scores are all kind of based around that scholarship, and it's done district-wide in the state. So it wouldn't be this, the same kind of approach, but because they worked on some of those things before, she said she was going to check back with their executive team and let us know what kind of interest they had in working on that with us. And so I have also got a lot of contact information, so if anybody's interested in looking at that further who's not on the committee, I definitely can give anybody those numbers or websites. We did talk about, some of the ways that we could do it. We talked about, like, the testing agencies allowing the students to give one of their free scores to the Apply Texas site. I kind of talked with SAT about that. I don't know if that would work, but it's certainly an option. And we also talked about trying to talk to the testing agencies about the fact that, not most, but a good part of the time, institutions are getting test scores off of transcripts that are coming from high schools or, other things. And so this would be a way that we would be getting it directly from them. So from the testing agencies. So those are two ideas, but if other people have ideas that we could use in an argument with the testing agencies to implement that policy or to implement some kind of sharing, that would be good. And it was also requested that a white paper be developed on this subject, and Jeff Fuller agreed to work with me, and we'll try to get something going on that. So if anybody has anything to add to that, I'm just going to put that in a little nutshell there. And if you have any other comments or you want things included, please be sure and contact me. But I think that's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Cheryl. Any other questions for Cheryl? Fantastic. Jose, I think you sent out that information in an email, at least to me, and so about the memo and the counselor flyer. So everybody should actually have received that, so you can see that information that was distributed on that.
Ethan, I actually just got an email, and that'll go on the TACAC listserv this morning as well. So school counselors, about 1,100 school counselors, will get that email, that the flyers and the attachments as well, so they can know about the opportunity that exists now in the counselor suite.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Cheryl. Okay. Now, moving on. Cheryl.
The other Cheryl. All right, this is T-Rex, and glad that Glenn is on the phone. We combined our meeting, our subcommittee meeting, with the high school counselor one, and it was a long meeting. So I'm going to need assistance from the people who were offering their thoughts on this. Glenn, I had submitted those questions to you, and your feedback is what I brought to our subcommittee meeting, saying we need, you needed more additional information in order to know how to properly answer those questions, because what we asked did not seem to be what was true, if that makes sense. And what we determined was that all the high schools they're sending all the data to each other, but we're not getting it on the college side. Is that correct so far? We're not getting all that data. We're not getting the full list of scores from earlier on in the high school career, and that's what's causing a lot of the problems. Daryl, can you speak to that?
excuse me. Right now, the only scores that are coming across to the colleges and the universities on the TREX is the final exit level scores that are required for high school graduation. The scores for the 9th, 10th grade test are not appearing on TREX, even though they appear on the high school test record. When that data is extracted at the high school through their software programs to prepare TREX, it only extracts the exit level score. So when TREX comes to us, if they have not yet taken that exit level test near the end of their 11th grade, it does not come across. It's a null field. So that makes it impossible for us to use the TREX as a standalone document from the high school for decisions on dual credit admissions. So we have to go back and ask the high school then to send us a paper test score for their tax scores right now. Where the concern is that this coming fall we're going to be changing over from tax to end of course testing, and we don't know how that's going to look, and so that we know at this point that TEA is going to have to require some sort of revision or update to their TREX in order to capture those new scores. And we think that this is a time that we need to be asking that they also include the other end of course tests from the.
Okay, right. So first of all, the only requirement that was created when TREX was first excited was to send end of course, or excuse me, the tax exit level test. So non-exit levels are purposely not sent on the transcripts, and that was a decision made back 5 or 6 years ago in conjunction with THECB and TEA. So and I wasn't part of that, so I don't know why that was decided. But apparently the exit levels are the only official test that should be used in assessing the student for a college entrance.
Okay, that
is correct, and that is the problem. To my knowledge, this committee was not asked for input on that decision, and I know at our college we were not asked.
Right.
But that decision is correct if the assumption is correct, and in this case the assumption is incorrect, that the transcript is only needed at the point after the student graduates from high school. That would be perfectly okay with the model that exists.
Right.
But that model does not address the issue of admitting students into dual credit at the beginning of their junior year, because there are no test scores on the transcript that we receive from the high school.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so we're talking about a different requirement, essentially, or a different reason for a transcript.
Yes.
And bear with me, I'm taking notes. Because I don't decide that. I just implement what somebody else decides.
Absolutely, we understand.
And this is where I think we were talking about statute changes, and that the Legislative Budget Board had heard that we were discussing this issue, or whoever that was. Is that who it was? So that we're going to be working on that. There were a couple things that we had decided we wanted to address for statute changes, and Jose is going to help us with that.
Okay. All right, so I will take that specific question up with Kelly Calloway over in curriculum area that is my primary contact for transcript information. So the second part of your issue with the STAR EOC, now we have already implemented support for STAR EOC within TREX. So as an example, last year the freshman class for the first to take STAR. Now, it's a little early for you to start receiving transcripts from them, but if you were to receive a transcript with a student who took STAR, then it would be reported. And not only do we report the roll-up, and I can't remember the terminology, but the final end of course dates, but we also report the subset test scores, and those are raw scores.
Okay, I understand that, but I just want to make sure for clarification. You say that's already being done for the new transcript requirement. But is that for high school to high school, or is that from high school to college? Because right now, my understanding is that high school to high school, the TREX has all of the test history, whereas the transcript that comes from the high school to the college only has the exit level, the final graduation exit level score. And I just want to make sure that that's not the case right now.
Right. Okay. So now, all right. So just to make sure we're talking about the same thing. So for tax test, we only send exit level tests to on the transcript to a college or a university.
That's correct.
Right. For STAR end of course, I'm sorry. Let me back up. For STAR, we are only sending EOC and the associated subset test.
And that's for every grade level?
That's correct.
And that will be on the transcript that goes to the college?
That's correct.
Okay.
So we don't, if they take a non-end of course STAR exam, you will not see that on a transcript.
All right. And I'm understanding that an end of course is not just the one that they take at the junior or senior level for graduation, but it'll be like the 9th, 10th, and 11th grade test?
Yes.
Okay, individually. Okay. Right. I think that should resolve our current issue with the dual credit and tax.
Right. So this problem may go away over time. It sounds like it as we transfer from tax to STAR.
Okay.
But I will pose the original question back to Kelly and see what kind of response I get.
All right. Thank you.
Glenn, one of the other things that was on the list of issues was how will this new combination with National Student Clearinghouse affect this partnership? Now, how will that affect TREX?
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't catch what.
National Student Clearinghouse taking over the UT server. Is that right?
Speedy server.
Speedy server. Dang, I always say it wrong.
Sorry.
How will that affect? What will that effect be on the TREX process?
Well, that could. This is the first I've heard of that, I guess. Was that part of your original inquiry?
No,
Cheryl?
it was not part of that. I thought I copied you on a couple trails of information, but that's can you talk about
Yeah, the UT has a contract for a year feasibility study with the intention to transfer management of the Speedy server from the Registrar's Office in UT Austin to the National Student, NSC, I guess it is, National Student Clearing House, and both sides probably are going to move forward on that unless something comes up which changes their mind, and that they would then be managing the Speedy server and under the understanding that they would continue to deliver the services that are currently delivered at the same cost using the Speedy server, and that they would take over management of that, upgrade some infrastructure, and I can send you a copy of some information that was put out about that if you want, Glenn.
Okay, that'd be great. We would have to, obviously, especially if they change the server environment of any sort and create new IP addresses or URLs or email exchange information. We would need that because we correspond with the UT server via email back, for the status change notifications, and obviously send the files directly to the IP address. So if any of that changes, we would need to know that.
Yeah, we're early on in the process, although I think that people are intending to move forward. What I'll do is probably get you in touch with some of the Speedy support people, and then you can be part of that conversation. How's that? Okay, that'd be fine. Is Tim Tashian involved in that? No longer. He now works at St. Ed's. But I can get you in touch with the Speedy support group. Okay. Do you have a time frame when that's going to occur? No. I think that, like I said, the announcement that went out publicly, it makes it sound pretty much a done deal because I think both sides want this to happen. I think the actual wording of the agreement between the two sides, just for legalese, allowed for either side for the thing to fall apart if either side wanted out. But my understanding from conversations I've had with the Speedy support group at UT Austin is that they definitely intend to move forward and don't really intend to wait a full year to do that. Okay.
I know at the TACRO conference, at the Speedy EDI session that Dave Stones did, and they had folks at that session from National Student Clearinghouse, and this question was brought up. It was mentioned a couple times during the conference, and working through the folks at UT, the functional folks, not just the technical folks, but the functional folks, they didn't feel like there was going to be any kind of a noticeable change.
Right, and if all they do is take the existing infrastructure and change who is supporting it, that obviously that wouldn't change the configuration that T-Rex requires to communicate. But if they make any changes, like put it on a different server or something like that, that might change, then we would obviously need to know. So it sounds like, at least the first brush is just going to be a management change.
Right, but I do expect that the location of the server will change, and so therefore probably access to it for you would change as well. But hopefully that will be something fairly simple. Okay, I'll get you in touch with
the information and a contact, and we can make sure that if they make any changes will affect us, that they know to let us know beforehand, so we can coordinate our changes.
Okay.
Does anyone have any additional questions for Glenn? Or Glenn, do you have any questions for us regarding T-Rex?
No questions. I want to let you know on the 15th, or the weekend of the 15th of December, we're putting out a new release of T-Rex. There should not be any impact to you, famous last words. We do have a fix in. Over the course of the last probably 8 months or so, we've had an issue that has caused our communication with the UT Speedy server to just drop on occasion, and what that caused was the transcripts weren't being sent. And I think we had an episode with Texas A&M. Mm-hmm. I think it was early August, where they didn't get a whole lot of transcript they were waiting for. So we have a fix for that going in the 15th that will eliminate the problem that is causing that link to drop. So hopefully that'll be a good thing to happen.
That is a good thing.
The primary reason for the release on that weekend is to move T-Rex to a new single sign-on security system. So that should be nothing that you should be concerned about. And that's pretty much all I have.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Unless you want to stay on, you're free to go.
Okay, I will pose the question to Kelly and Cheryl. What I will do is I'll feed that response back through you.
Thank you.
Okay?
Yep, that works.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Glenn.
Bye.
The other issue that we talked about as a subcommittee was homeschool transcripts. So, and understand that TACRO is putting a committee together to submit a request to the coordinating board for listing parameters for, were you in the room then? For homeschool transcripts.
So it just dawned on me, and I didn't mention this yesterday, but it just dawned on me. TEA used to at one point have a list on their site of offenders, diploma mills. And I don't know if that's still there because I haven't looked at it recently, but more importantly, I don't know how accurate or current it is. But that could be one of the suggestions. Because I have a feeling that this issue of whatever we want to call them, institutions, is going to be something that is looked at beyond just our needs. I mentioned yesterday that many hiring entities are looking to validate these diploma types, whatever you want to call them, and there's not really a place to go to identify if school ABC is a legitimate school or not. So I think the needs really are beyond just school, university, college use. It's also it deals with employment as well.
And you had mentioned also that, and I've found this to be true, colleges or companies are calling us for that information, and that really is not. That's not what we're supposed to be doing. That needs to be housed elsewhere.
A couple of years ago, I spoke to someone. I went through a series of calls at TEA and talked to a number of people, and I don't have, well, probably back in my office someplace I have record of the names of who I talked to. But basically, the stance that I got from the people that I talked to at TEA is that they no longer have that list, or if there is a list available somewhere on the web still floating around, they don't really control it, and that by law they really can't produce a list like that because TEA does not certify or credential or authorize any type of education except public education. So the only institutions that they can say are quality education institutions are the public high schools or public secondary education. And by statute, the same statute that says that we in post-secondary education have to treat graduates of homeschool, private charter schools, non-traditional education, the same as graduates from public secondary education. That statute prohibits the state from credentialing, certifying, checking, inspecting, all of those things that TEA having a list would imply that they're doing. That's why they don't do that anymore.
To figure something out because it seems to be growing, and as soon as you identify, not really homeschool, but these non-sanctioned,
non-accredited. I mean, that's what we call them, non-accredited.
Yes, they moved. Something else. It goes somewhere else. Someone else is the issue. We get a group, and then we get a list of names from each other, from TACRO or whatever, and then that group's put away, and somebody else appears on the scene. So we need somewhere to house that. I don't know where to go with that. And that's all that I have, unless somebody can remember something else that we discussed.
Well, we did talk about yesterday, and it was mentioned at our meeting last month or last time we met, the possibility of working with coordinating board at pursuing a change to the statute for TRECs so that it's required for high schools to send transcript data using TRECs. And I mean, it's interesting this time of year we bring it up because of the fact that, and I talked about this yesterday, but I think it's important for folks to understand what we talked about yesterday, since some of the people in the room and our audience at home was not there. We are, with T-Rex now being in its really third or fourth year, we're not seeing any decrease in paper applications. In fact, what we're seeing is just the opposite. We're seeing increases because many of our high schools just are choosing not to send documents via T-Rex. And the inefficiency that this has created is overwhelming. And, what I hear all the time from my high school colleagues is, oh, Jeff, it works great from school to school. Well, yeah, because you have to by law. You have to send it. We just had a deadline this past Saturday, and we had 400, 500, 600 transcripts, paper transcripts that schools would bring in each day. And, so all last week, they pile up and they pile up. And the struggle with that is this. Student mails, drops off whatever transcript. We can't get to it necessarily in a 1 or 2 day time period. Meanwhile, they're checking their status online, finding that a transcript is not there, and then mailing another one. So the duplicate transcript issue is really compounding this. Not to mention, as I talked yesterday about, just the data integrity issues of having somebody keying in that data manually is a nightmare. And it leaves its room for error. So I think there's definitely some opportunities for improved efficiency if this statute was to actually get some legs and walk on the hill and do something. Just because, it really, until there's something required, we're still going to get just whatever the school feels that it works best for them.
And that is often a third-party vendor who has great reporting capabilities.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Cheryl, because it just hit my in the head as well. We have HISD has as a Naviance school, which is a tool that many public and private schools use now for their college search and their portfolio for the students. And their school counselor sent an email to a couple of colleges the other day that said, be on the lookout for our DocuFied, our eDocs transcripts, because we don't send T-Rex. Now, those are PDFs. And, the struggle with the PDF is it's not just you get the PDF and you can then turn around and print it. No, you have to usually sign in, get a password. It's like 3 or 4 sign-ins for that to happen. Then we have to print it because we have to image the document. And it's just a nightmare. And some of those transcript vendors also, there reaches a point where if you don't get to it by a certain day or time, it expires. And I think because while it's an easy tool for the school to do, I think the easier thing would be get on board with T-Rex.
Yes.
And have your data show up the next day, and it's a dead issue.
And we're working at A&M, we're working at direct loading into our banner system,
right,
where we can't do that with the DocuFied docs. The students are hitting either the student, whatever the entry point is, either the student or the school. They don't see it, so they hit it again. We get multiple duplicates, and it's put us 8 days behind in trying to process those images that were downloaded. Because you don't know it's a duplicate when you get it. You can't tell. Maybe something had been changed or added. Everyone has to be touched.
We are having conversations with Parchment right now about getting these transcripts as a data file, a CSV file, not as a PDF, because it's pointless. But we have to pay for that.
Yes.
So that's really where, we're paying for Apply Texas. We're paying. So in essence, we're paying, when the technology exists for the schools to use T-Rex, it's just it's a nightmare. And I know the school setting environment, the feeling is, well, it's much easier for us to send this via whatever normal process, but and that's where we have to really have some legs behind having the statute change to say you're required to do this.
And have T-Rex, TEA, make it easier for them to want to use T-Rex instead of these third-party companies. We want to support the state. Schools are going the other way.
And that's the point that is very important to the conversation, is that the third-party entities are providing a very good service to the high school and the high school students for free, and that's wonderful. And then they're providing us the information and the requests of information to us about prospective students, which is great, except for the fact that that's also an additional cost for us. So we cover the cost of their front-end and back-end process. And if we have an efficiency built into the state system of TREX, then that's a piece that is supported by the state and through our actions. And that's a better use of our resources and something that we could promote for uniformity of process. And so that's a very good point. So, other questions about TREX and the TREX subcommittee? Thank you very much, Cheryl.
That's it. You're welcome.
Alberto and I were partners in the technology subcommittee, and I'm going to try to provide you some overview of what our conversation was yesterday. And Alberto, please interrupt me if you find that I've glossed over something. It was the first subcommittee of yesterday's day, and so of course it was a little too broad in some of its subject matter, and a lot of it was covered in other subcommittees, and so I'm just going to try to provide you highlights. For example, we started with the information about the FAFSA and the counselor suite, which we have discussed in both Cheryl's subcommittee reports. And we've talked about information about moving forward with additional information about trying to provide information from Apply Texas to the API to FAFSA, which was also discussed earlier in another subcommittee report. Some conversation about the speedy transition to the National Student Clearinghouse, which Tim brought up, and so to try to talk about things that were not already covered would be to talk about a couple of other items very quickly. The first one was clean address and the Apply Texas using the product finalist through the University of Texas system to help with scrubbing addresses. I think that's a term I just used. I don't know if it's correct. For our information for students who are applying. So to make sure that we're cleaning addresses for student applications, I think that we will all benefit from that. The second one was to discuss integration with TREX. So applications from Apply Texas would then queue TREX to request a transmission of transcript from the high school that the student is in to the institution to which they are applying. And that's a tremendous step forward in automation and what we could do with this process. It's a reinforcement and bolstering of what TREX is and can be in the future, and it's really a nice efficiency for students to be able to do that in one step, to apply to an institution and by applying request a transmission of their transcript to the institution that they're applying to. That actually is something that we're going to have to work through and probably won't need to be available until the next cycle, but that may be something that we'll need to put on our list of items for development. And lastly, we talked about mobile access to the Apply Texas application. As you may be aware, there are some student populations in our state who have more access to mobile applications of technology than they do to sit down into a hard desktop computer access to technology on a continuous basis. I'm sure they have access in their schools or libraries, but they may have better access to a smartphone or a tablet or other device that is yet to be developed today. And so the conversation was about how is the use of the Apply Texas application available for the mobile platform and mobile platform technology. We talked about scalability and the use of the way that our current process of the Apply Texas website is accessible, probably works very well scalability-wise down to a tablet, but we may have some challenges with smartphones. And so, Tim, if you have any comments on that, I'll definitely defer to you.
I think you represented it well. There was, I think that a follow-up that we could do would be to verify that using a tablet doesn't present any particular problems with the Apply Texas application. There was some significant discussion about iPhones and some doubt in the room as to whether a smartphone is an appropriate device for actually filling out an application. But we also talked about the possibility of at least looking into some kind of app that could be used on a smartphone that might connect you to your profile or show you what apps you've got and what status they're in, so that you could just kind of check some things. But that would be a separate application that would have to be written for that technology. Does that ring a bell?
Tim, if we do an app of some sort, would it be better for your team's time to do it, or for us to see if there's a third party that develops those that could do that for us? And I'm just thinking of your already budgeted time.
Yeah. Doing apps for smartphones is not what my development team does. I don't. Depending on what we wanted to do, that's a good question. It may be something somebody would want to take on, from the client group. Or I don't think it's really hard to do once you know how to do it. There's lots of guides out there, but it kind of comes down to what do you want to put on it, and would it need to have login, and it probably would, and how would you manage that, but obviously I'm sure that there would be people who would be willing to do the work for pay to build that. It would take some research as to who would do it and what it would cost. And I would suggest that if you want to move in that direction, that you have a subgroup of this committee kind of to look into it and say, what is it that we'd really want on an app, and then figure out how to do it.
Thank you, sir. Alberto, did I do a decent job with that?
You covered everything.
Okay, thank you.
One more.
Wait, yes, Cheryl.
Are you finished?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Questions?
Well, there's another item about the technology side of it, but Dr. Heinze is going to probably bring it up in the scholarship part too, but I wanted to at least get it in here, and that's what we had discussed, what Tim and I had discussed about a column at the end of the application search results, admissions app search results, showing whether someone has a scholarship app somewhere in the process. So Tim is looking into that. Will probably come up again under scholarship. That was it.
I have one more question. This is for Jose. We talked about pre-populating the FAFSA before, that dialogue with the Department of Ed. Has that gone anywhere, do you know, or is that still?
Well, I think that's where we're going to be. Like, we want the white paper so that we can start talking to the feds about it.
Put it together and send it to them.
Exactly.
That's good.
Yeah, I have an update on the T-Rex API. Once it's fully functional, TA has agreed to change the EDI, so the transcript will come back to the institution with the application number. So that will be so much quicker to do the matching.
So in essence, you're going to match the transcript
with the
app based on the application number.
Exactly. Because
marvelous.
Each
so perfect.
The way that the API works is that each application will be its own separate little request to T-Rex. So, and again, this is going to be something that we will make sure that it is in production. I think we were talking yesterday that we're going to do a mini pilot with probably Laredo Community College.
Yes, sir. And I think College Station is also Cheryl.
Yes. So we're going to try to do that during this year so that we fully implement it in August 1st, at the starting of next, just to work out the little kinks and problems with the API.
So in the API, then, if a school is sending a transcript via T-Rex and it's really not due to being pinged by their app, that data will just be blank. That it won't have an application number associated with that transcript.
Exactly.
And I guess y'all will have to take it up with your SISs and stuff to know that how to consume that extra bit of EDI that's going to come in with the app ID. I'm not sure exactly how they're going to wrap that, but because I don't think there's a standard place to put it from EDI, but there are places to put, kind of miscellaneous data.
You, Jose, send me an email or with that information on it that you just said or something, so I can take that to my next EIS meeting.
Yes.
Thank you, Jose. That's fantastic news. I think that will be something that will be very beneficial to our constituents.
Ethan, can I go back to the app for 1 second?
Yes, sir.
I'm sitting here thinking, because I've actually not had an opinion till now on the app until we started discussing it. One thing we have an issue with our applicants is them creating multiple accounts. They go in and they forget their password, and we do all kinds of things. We hand them a little piece of paper where they can write it all down, and they can take it with them. We tell them to save it in their phone. If we had an app feature, they could save that in the profile of the app. So when they go back to do another application, then they're not creating a new profile. So we may end up with cleaner data and less junk sitting out there when we consolidate those down. We may have 10,000 apps, but not all of them are single individuals. We have some individuals who have created multiple accounts because they can't remember their last login. So rather than emailing the team, they just created another one and went on. This would allow us to let them save that information somewhere. Just another plus to doing something like that.
I have a question on that. So if that were the case and it was based on an email address, if it was the same email address, do we have something in there to block that? Saying you already have an account? Yes? So that would only happen if someone was using a different email address. Is that correct?
That's what you have to use. You kind of set up a different profile, as it were, and then it kind of treats you as a different person. But you would need to use a different email address.
But Tim, they would be prompted by that, Jeannie's point, when
they try to add the same address?
So if I create a profile with a Gmail account, and 2 months go and I forget, and I'm like, I'm not going to try to remember, I'll just restart it. If I start it again with that same Gmail address, at that profile creation point, will they be told you already have?
I'll have to ask about that. I'm not sure. Maybe somebody could try that.
Because we took some steps a couple years ago to include forgot password, forgot user ID.
Right.
So it doesn't sound like it would be too difficult if, just making sure that it's doing one pass, and if it says, this email address already is in the system, then prompt the user to say, you already have a profile created. Would you like to click forgot password, whatever, and then they can go and answer the questions. Hopefully they remember that they wrote as their secret questions.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll get an answer before we adjourn.
Other questions for the technology subcommittee? I think that we need to take that forward, Jeremy, your recommendation about we need to discuss the potential for application development, and then also we can meet with Tim to talk about scalability of the current application.
Well, and I also had a thought about, emails. We also know students don't check their emails anymore. 18-year-olds don't. And then they have multiple, which is funny. They don't check them, but they have multiple. So if it doesn't let them use one, they'll just use another one. Or they'll use their counselors, or they'll use their parents, or they'll use something else. So they're not always putting in the same one. If it doesn't work for them, they'll just try another one until they get something. And it doesn't have to be real. It could be bogus. And we never know. Because there's no authentication between email address and server.
You could. Anybody can go in and start an app to anywhere, and so it's because it doesn't have any way of knowing that you aren't who you say you are, and that you're at the wrong place or whatever.
Other questions?
I find it annoying myself, but to stop that, you can do a validation on the email address. So before they proceed any further in the profile, when they initially set it up, they get the email back to their account that they have to click to validate before they can move forward. Again, personally, I find that very annoying, but a lot of companies do that now.
Good idea.
Which would keep out the bogus emails. Yeah, it doesn't keep people from using three different profiles and 3 different addresses that they actually have. But it would say yes, and that would be something that could be implemented if we could certainly look into that as a project if that's what you wanted.
Well, I don't think that that's going to solve the issue. I mean, I don't think that's the issue. If a student provides a bogus email, the student is not going to create an application because the email has your password. So the email has to be a valid email.
Then how is this happening?
Wait a minute.
Because they delete the email and they forget their password. We hear it all the time.
Actually, Jose, they can once they're in the system, they don't have to go back to their email right then. They can go ahead and do their first application.
Right.
It's after they exit the system
Yes.
that they've got to remember those authentication information. But the email never bounces. It never comes back and says that's an invalid email, and so it doesn't submit their application or it nulls their account. There's nothing there like that. I know this because I create bogus ones all the time when I'm doing false students to see how it imports into our system. So that's why I know that.
And that was, I'm sure, set up, intentionally at that point to try to make it so they could just go in and continue right in, But that's certainly something that could be changed.
I guess you can do it. I think of what I was talking about is the counselors, counselor where you have like a temp password. I guess you can set it up that way, where they have to have a temp password sent to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are various ways it could be done if that's what you want to do, and that's one.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's another question that we need to take back with that group for discussion. Thank you. Anything else for technology? The Student Correspondence Committee did not meet, nor did the Graduate or International. Are there any things for those two subcommittees we need to approach?
Not for Graduate and International.
We don't have a Graduate International rep on the committee, I don't believe.
Just me.
So we may want to survey.
I know someone else who has asked to be on, but he didn't join a phone call that we had scheduled, and that was Robert Jenkins from Utah.
Right. We don't have anybody on this committee. Who's from. So I think it may be beneficial if we surveyed those groups to see if they had any issues, comments, concerns, thoughts. I know you put something out on the TECRA listserv asking for feedback, but I'm just fearful that we may go down this road since, we used to have Pat on the committee and she could let us know.
In with us, but
I think it would just be beneficial just to at least ask: are there issues, thoughts that the Graduate or International folks may think?
We had made so many we had made so many changes to that app a while back. That could be why we're not hearing much response back. But it's a good idea to poll again.
We handle graduate processing also in my department. So if you need someone on the committee, that's great, but I will tell you we have a very customized process as to how we work those applications. So I'd still want feedback from other folks because ours probably wouldn't be the
one to use as the model.
Yeah.
And
thank you.
And that's fine. I think we can just send. Do you want me to do that as the chair?
You bet.
Swell.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Cheryl. The Scholarship Subcommittee met yesterday, and
Yes.
Dr. Heinze has a report for us. Dr. Heinze.
I've distributed for you some notes from our meeting yesterday, so this should help us progress through the meeting notes pretty quickly. Ethan, Cheryl, and Jeff and Tim and I met yesterday to discuss the scholarship as a subcommittee to discuss that module. There were 3 items that we discussed. The first of them was a suggestion that we discussed last time briefly about an option that would allow students to not complete questions that disclose their family's income. These questions are located in the Family and Financial Information section of the scholarship application. After a good discussion, the committee came up with a proposal that we felt would be a best approach to this, that would include an auditable disclaimer to the instruction block just below the title, Family and Financial Information. The disclaimer would require the student to acknowledge by checking that notation that they understand that by not filling out the family disclosure questions, by not doing that, they could and would be considered for merit scholarships, but they would not be considered for need-based merit scholarships, either institutional, internal, or external from other corporations or foundations or so forth. And so in your document, there is a statement that the subcommittee would suggest putting in that information block that would accomplish this. And it would simply say, if you do not wish to be considered for need-based scholarships, scholarships that are awarded based on a combination of financial need and academic merit, you do not need to complete questions 3 through 17 in this section. And then if that's what they want to do, there would be a auditable moment there for the student that would say something to the effect, I've read this disclaimer and acknowledge that I'm not applying for need-based scholarships. And the reason for this is that there are foundations that are offering need-based merit scholarships. We in the business need to use this data on the scholarship module to identify who those students are that we can send forward for consideration. The most prominent of these would be the Terry Foundation. And so without this information, none of us would be able to we would not be able to identify in the time frame that we need to identify them to send them forward for consideration. So this information becomes important. So this was, I think, would be appropriate to say the subcommittee's best way to allow some students who know they are not going to qualify for need-based merit scholarships to opt out and not put that family information there. But for other students who would want to be considered, they would need to go ahead and fill that information in. Did I fairly represent that?
Yes,
okay.
we added the description of what a need-based scholarship is because we recognize the fact that they don't always understand exactly what that is, and to opt out without understanding.
Correct.
Cut them out without even knowing it. So.
Okay. The second item we discussed was one that Cheryl talked about a few minutes ago, and that's the addition of a column and a code or set of codes on the application search results page that would allow the institution to easily see whether students had applied for a scholarship. And not only that, what stage in that process had they completed the scholarship application, or is it just opened and not complete, and so on and so forth. So that's was the idea there. Tim felt like this could be accomplished without investing a great deal of effort, staff time, but he wanted a chance to go and check. So that's where we left it at that point. Okay, and the third, Cheryl Moon, I think I'm going to let you discuss this. Cheryl brought forward an idea or a concern about the linkage between the application for admission and the scholarship application. And Cheryl, would you like to summarize your concern?
Yes. This came about because on our campus we were trying to figure out how can we use the scholarship application. And so we decided to do it. We built it. We put it out there. And so as we got questions at our very early recruiting events about, hey, can we just go ahead and send the application and then do the scholarship application separately, we said yes, okay? So then we came around to working with our main campus, College Station, and they said that, well, we can't, if you're going to do some of them electronically, we have to do all of them electronically. So then we had, a part of our students had filled it out and a part of them hadn't, and they all wanted to be included in the scholarship pool. So we had to go ahead and send an email out to our students, our prospective students, that said, hey, even though you might have filled this out, we're still going to use paper applications, so also fill out this paper application. But we would really like, and I was talking to Tim yesterday, he said there may be a way to do it, so he may have an update. But we would like to, we think it's very important for smaller institutions that want to use that to have the ability to have students fill it out after they have already submitted their application, because they may not be aware of what on your campus requires that application to be considered. And so then later on in the process, if we find people that would be eligible, or if they self-identify themselves, then they can't fill it out after the fact. But did you find out?
Well, what I'm told is that you can go back in after you've submitted an application. You can go back in after submitting an application and start a scholarship app. There is some subtlety to the linkage that maybe could be, I don't know the history of it, and maybe it could be addressed, and we'd certainly like to see, if possible, more people using the scholarship app, and would want to know what might be holding that up, if anything is. But my understanding is that they, in fact, even after they've submitted a regular app, they in fact can go back and start from scratch or submit a scholarship app, because they are linked. They are linked.
I have a list of students at my institution that were, disappointed that they could not do it once I personally told them that they could. So I could test that out for you very quickly.
That'd be great.
When I get back, I'll let them know, and then I'll let you know.
Yeah, let me know what their situation was, and I'll look into it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I think that's our subcommittee's report.
Thank you. Any other questions for the scholarship subcommittee? And that's gold star for that subcommittee with the report, filed report and everything. I appreciate that very much. We will, in agenda item number 9, when we talk about priority recommendation for changes for the application for the 2015-2016 cycle, we'll talk about subcommittee proposed changes, and I just appeal to our subcommittee chairs to help me represent those if we do not discuss them as we go forward in that conversation. Item number 5, I'd like to go to item number 5, the next item on our agenda, moving forward from the subcommittee updates. And then I'd like to pose for a quick break, if that's all right with everybody. So item number 5 is an update on TACRO regarding the hosting of TACRO as being the host for the Apply Texas conference, or the Apply Texas users meeting that we traditionally hold in the summer, June. And I'm going to ask our TACRO liaisons from the executive board, who are also on this committee, Mr. Trey Hadaway, to help me with that information. Trey?
TACRO and the folks that assisted in putting the Apply Texas Speedy Conference last June were very pleased with the outcome at the Pickle Center, and have gone ahead and reserved the Pickle Center again this year on June 17th and 18th. After discussions with the executive committee this past month, TACRO is willing to continue to serve in that role and work on the behind-the-scenes details, registration, collection of fees, arrangements, and anything else that the Applied Texas Advisory Committee would like them to do in assistance on putting the actual program together. So from our standpoint, TACRO is willing to continue serving in the role that it is accustomed to, and providing assistance, but we'll defer to the advisory committee on the meat of the program and serve in any capacity that they would like them to do that if that assistance is needed there as well.
Thank you very much. TACRO has been a wonderful partner to help us in this endeavor, and I think that not only are we very appreciative and excited about a continued partnership with them, but it definitely would be something that we hope that we can grow and develop this program, this users conference, to better serve our constituents and perhaps appeal to more of the TACRO's members as well. And so we will definitely work toward a better conference this next year with that organization's help and partnership. I would like to propose that we have a subcommittee put together to help put together the conference logistics, probably liaisonship with TACRO to discuss those information, those pieces of conference planning, while the group as a whole can talk about program matter. Just somebody to work on that. And as we take a break, if you're interested in that, let me know, and we'll try to put something together. Okay, if there's no objections, I would like to stand for perhaps a 10-minute recess. Is that all right with everybody? Thank you very much.
What are the dates again for the conference?
The dates again were June 17th and 18th. Thank you, Mary. Okay, we stand in recess. Okay, welcome back, everybody. We have the remaining items on the agenda are specific to the application and discussion for items we would like to see revised, changed, or corrected for the upcoming iteration of the application. And so we'll just start with those in the item agenda order. Item agenda 16, number 6 is discussion of the uploading of documents to the application. This was a request submitted to us from University of North Texas. It is as specific as that question right there, the opportunity to upload documents to the application. I'm not sure which particular documents, but perhaps any and all documents. Tim, what do you think about that?
It sounds like a reasonable and interesting project. We obviously need a place to put the documents. I think that it's an idea that should be looked at seriously. It seems reasonable. It's happening more and more. We at the University of Texas Austin, all the supporting documents are uploaded now. So I think that if the committee wants to move forward on trying to scope this out, then I would be happy to lead that effort and to do some research. We would have to, my guess off the top of my head, and that's not completely off the top of my head, I've thought about it before, would be, where are the documents going to live and how are they going to be accessed after they're uploaded? So, there are options for that. We could approach, since we're connected to the University of Texas, we could approach them about their repository, which they already have. There are other repositories. You could. That's something that could be outsourced, for someone else. The Texas Digital Library has a repository. There might be either institutions or private firms that could host it, and then obviously again, what happens then in terms of how does that get then sent to? The process would have to be lined out and carefully. Does it stay there, and then people get a link to it or something where they can look at it from the university, or does it somehow then get passed to the university? Is the way it would work now. I mean, that's how I would approach it.
What seems like a very simple request is obviously much more complicated, as often is the case. And if anybody has any ideas of what would be material that would need to be submitted with an application, I'm thinking of perhaps portfolios or submissions, writing samples. I'm not sure if that would take the place of the essay. Go ahead.
Fee waivers.
Fee waivers, thank you. Yeah.
Counselor recommendations. They may want to, there's a whole slew of things. I think we would want to make it clear, though, as far as what would be documents that, while they could be uploadable, would not be acceptable documents, like a high school transcript. Because I don't think we want a student uploading a high school transcript, because how do we know it's legitimate? But we would just need to specify that these, while you may have the capacity, because you really can't prevent whatever, but letting them know that these are unacceptable. Another conversation may be also just those of us that work with international students, visa, copies of their visa and passport, things like that would not be acceptable things to upload. So I think there's opportunities to say what we can and can't, or what we would and would not allow that would be acceptable.
And I think right now you can use the custom questions, the dynamic questions, to, if you have specific things that you want them to upload, you can say, please go here, and then if you've got a site at your university where they could upload that's a current kind of workaround to the fact that Apply Texas itself doesn't store the documents and make them available.
And that's what we do.
That's a very good point, and perhaps we need to model that Texas A&M process, because in this instance, specifically for a fee waiver, that's a piece of documentation that we need to have attached to a student record. Not necessarily something to view, but something we would need to be transmitted and received, because then we would then image it into our record.
And EDI currently wouldn't be able to transmit, like a PDF, and upload a PDF file or something. There would have to be another way to transmit that.
Tim, a couple of questions. Are we going to need to be concerned or have a process in place that makes sure there's no viruses or anything attached to those files as they're being uploaded? That going to be, and that may be solved by limiting the file type, how it's uploaded.
At UT Austin, we, with very few exceptions, insist on PDF and have almost no pushback on that. I think for our letters of rec system, we allow other document types, but then it's converted to PDF upon view. But I think for my experience is more on the grad school side, that all of the uploaded supplemental documents that we get in the graduate school at UT Austin are all PDFs. We don't accept anything else.
And I guess my second question is a storage thing. Are we going to hold those as long as we hold apps, or once they're downloaded, or are y'all thinking they're held for so many days and that documentation's gone away? Long-term storage, you're talking about quite a bit of space there that's going to increase cost to all institutions, not just to the schools who are wanting them uploaded. So we'd have to have some way of clearing out that data or those attachments after a certain point. Not the whole profile in the application, of course, but just a thought, because that can grow quickly. Because PDFs are not small, right, usually.
I think that's definitely a piece that for consideration is data storage for continuing that process, and then protocol for maintaining that documentation, and then for excising that documentation.
This is Pilar Janice from Brownsville Independent School District. And I'm actually here with Jose Sanchez. I invited him. He's one of our Texas college advisors who works with Apply Texas. And I wanted him to listen to today's conversation and meeting. His campus actually has 60% Apply Texas, and he's trying to match Lopez that has 73%. But on the actual uploading of documents, the common application currently allows the counselor to do that. They can upload counselor recommendations, they can upload fee waivers and transcripts.
I'm sure that I'm not that familiar with their setup, but I would imagine they have a repository where all of those documents live.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, the Common App does. Yeah.
And that could be done. We don't currently handle the counselor letters of recommendation within Apply Texas, and that was by design, at least at some point. And I think that could all be done. It would come at not an insignificant cost, I would think.
I think if you specify what file the document needs to be in, and in this case PDF, and put it out there and, say this is the only, you can do it, but this is how it's got to be formatted, or, the document has to, and then let it move from there. So the student could collect all their information, a personal statement, letters of rec, whatever, fee waiver, whatever they may have, and then when they submit their app, then move to create or have those PDFs uploaded at the same time. My only concern is I'd hate for a student to submit their app and then feel like, oh gosh, I wish I could go back to my application and create and attach those documents. Now in that case, we would just maybe need to specify you need to send those documents to the institution, and here's how to do that.
Pilar, you said that the Common App allows them to upload transcripts. Are those unofficial transcripts at that point? Or are the transcripts coming from...
They're official transcripts. Jose is here, and so we're input, because he does this on a daily basis with the students. He's from Porter High School, and they were able to upload official transcripts.
So the counselors do that then?
The counselor will do it. Mm-hmm.
Pilar, is that a PDF usually?
Yes, it's a PDF.
Yeah. And we wouldn't want them to do PDFs. We want them to do TRECs. That's what we want them to do, because then we get the data in. But I think that there's definitely some opportunities with, just some of the conversations we've had recently in the past couple of weeks with some of the institutions talking about fee waivers and just the processes that many of us are doing. And this could help that, because then you could actually get an idea, okay, and tell the student this is what we need and this is the type of document you need to submit. But also personal statements, letters of rec, those kinds of things. In theory, it's a great idea. It may also lessen some of the headache that we get right now by counselors and students and parents, mainly counselors saying, I wish Apply Texas was more like Common App, so it could upload this and do those kinds of things, and so we'd at least be listening to the users and what we want to move toward.
And I think for the cost structure would definitely be something to look at. I mean, if 2-year institutions are not going to use this feature, it wouldn't be fair for them to absorb the cost. So we would have to look at the cost structure.
Yeah, I agree. That will be an incurred cost that will increase user participation investment. Other discussion on this item? Then I would entertain a vote on it. We can vote to move forward on either this would be a change to the system, so I would look for a recommendation from the committee.
Would the recommendation be just to start looking at researching the idea and getting back with us with some figures? And
we can start there. That's definitely true. I was trying to stay on track for our revision time.
So, Ethan, I would move that we ask the Apply Texas team to spec out the process to allow for uploading of documents to the Apply Texas application.
Very good.
And that sounds fine. Is that is there someone or a group of people or the committee as a whole that I would then contact or be in communication with as far as what documents are we talking about? As I get into it and do some research with possible options, you just want me to come back at the next meeting with what I found?
Yes, and Technology Subcommittee stands ready to serve in that capacity also in the interim.
I just have a question if there's any way to actually do some assessment within that, because you don't want to change a major process for a minimal amount of individuals. And I'm trying to think of who that would really affect. So it may affect grad programs from a reference letter standpoint, etc. Freshmen from the waiver standpoint, etc. But when you look at the total number, what's that percentage? Because if it's a small percentage, a cost analysis probably would show it might not be beneficial. So if there was any way that we could actually assess that when we're speccing it out, that would be a nice to know.
And that would be something I wouldn't be able to do myself. So as far as finding who it's going to affect and how many schools and how many kinds of documents, that might be something done first before a lot of, especially if it turned out that it didn't affect enough people for the committee to decide we should be spending our time speccing it out. So I'm not sure what's the next step is on that.
The College Board provides information to our district as to how many waivers are used. I don't know if they could provide the number of waivers that are given out or used. I don't know if they would have that information. That might give a ballpark number.
I think usually they provide probably like 100 waivers per school, but then the school can actually go back and request more.
I mean, I was thinking also the high school counselor certification form would also be a document that may be uploaded, considering more and more of us are getting those. So, I mean, I do think, and part of the discussion that the Apply Texas team look at would be to really talk to the universities that, namely North Texas, who requested that this change be made, but also other publics to see what other documents would be pieces that they may want to ask students to upload there, so that we kind of build and see what the true need is. So that also gives Tim an idea about things like space and how to, formatting and things like that the technical team may need to add.
Could I also add another important item that we haven't yet talked about that really falls into the same area? There's a growing concern about, do we really know who is applying online as far as what their real identity is, their true identity? This might be a means to addressing that issue also. When somebody applies online and says, I'm John Doe, we could require that they upload their photo ID so that we know that it is John Doe.
That is a SACS requirement now. It's going to come down, and it's coming down to match the federal regulations. So.
Well, that changes it a little bit, yeah.
Well, and I'm just wondering here because, like at my campus, we allow students and really require them to upload their photo before they get to the campus, so their photo ID is already done for them. Well, this hopefully could take care. Yeah. Now, we wouldn't want it in a PDF format. But I think this would allow us to be able to help authenticate the student, but also really get them prepared for first day of school and just having that information in advance. It also, for those, again, with international students, it allows us to then allow the student to upload their letter of financial backing as well as their all the other their passport photos, so that we can go ahead and then move on to, once we admit them, move to creating the I-20 much faster at that point. And many of us have checklists for these things in advance, but this would help allow the student to know at the forefront when they're submitting the application to upload all of that at that one time.
Very good. That became a broader conversation than I expected. So what we'll need to do, the motion on this item is to request that Tim and his crew provide us a feasibility study about application development or inclusion of data document uploading and data storage. And our responsibility as the committee is to poll the constituents about their interest in the use of this piece. Thank you, Janine. But I think Matt and Daryl really hit upon a piece that may move us towards a need versus a want in terms of critical application for accreditation, that we are being good stewards of application identity. And so if you guys would let me know more about that, I'd appreciate it. And we'll definitely look at that as in terms of a possibility. That going forward, I don't believe needs to be a motion, if that's all right, if you would like to retract that. Just to request that those two things take place.
The specking out, as well as what's the second piece?
Surveying the constituents.
Sure, I'll just amend my motion to include that as well.
Okay, then we'll go forward with that. All those in favor, second that item? Second. In favor? Anybody opposed to that? All right, we'll move forward with the discussion of development of uploading documentation based upon that protocol, and we'll make another decision based upon that implementation once we have more information. Next item is the discussion of first-generation college student designation on the application. This information is a request for clarification that I received at my institution in specific response to what is the General Academic Institutions Performance Measures definitions from the fiscal year 2014-15 Budget Structure Legislative Budget Board reporting guidelines for percent of baccalaureate graduates who are first-generation college students. In short, my institution was asking for a better clarification of first-generation college students' identification on the college on the common application, on the Apply Texas application. And the source material in that reporting procedure states that the question should be posed in the following manner. Quote, did either of your parents or legal guardians graduate from college? Yes or no? That this would be a collected question on the graduation application or other similar means. Currently, our process in terms of the information that we request from students on the Apply Texas application reads as follows. Let me pull that up. Our question is family's educational background and indicate the highest level of your parent or legal guardian's educational background, and that goes on a scale from no high school, some high school diploma, GED, some college, associate's degree, bachelor, 4 years degree, graduate, professional degree, or unknown. Now, that could be an adapted choice without changing anything in its sense. We could just say that if the answer equals associate's degree, bachelor's degree, or graduate professional degree, then that equals parents, yes, did graduate from college, and all others equal no. But my question to you is do we need to make that more specific or more clear and to help with our institution's reporting structure, or is that definition that interpretation that I just indicated, is that efficient enough for that conversation?
So we have the same issue from a financial aid standpoint because they need that data also, and I believe it's also becoming a state reporting issue.
That's where this one's coming from.
Okay, so I don't believe that that's a required question, where if it was made to be a required question, I think that would solve the issue and what you just said. Make it a yes, no as the data feeds in for that particular piece.
Okay. So then we would then change that from an optional to a required question. And then the second part of that conversation is then, is the structure that we have, should we keep the structure we have currently? Or should we change it to just a dichotomous question of yes, no?
I don't have a personal preference on it, and the information that's being requested by the different departments that I'm dealing with is literally just the yes, no.
I appreciate that. I also appreciate the value of that spectrum in terms of research and the wealth of data. And so I think that we could probably then, well, you're not using it? That's okay. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Get some better sense of.
Mm-hmm.
And you can get there.
Yes. Yes.
So it's fine.
Ethan, I'm a little unclear as to what where you're headed with the yes/no part of it. How are you saying that's going to be set up as a yes/no question?
If we took the existing structure, which is that spectrum of answers there, the answers that equal associate's degree, bachelor's degree, or graduate professional degree, I would say could be translated to yes, college graduate, and those that equal some high school, GED, some college, unknown, that those would equal no for college graduate. So, I mean, I think that we could make that determination easily off of the question that we have in the application currently. My question is, should it just be cut and dry, yes or no? So I think that that's just a question of...
Yes, they did graduate with some college degree of some sort, or
a 2 or 4 year degree. And if they have a graduate degree, then it's a safe assumption to say that that's met. So,
well,
and you've sat with these children while they fill out their stuff, and they have absolutely no clue what. Well, you know, their dad and mom and dad could have they could be doctors in town, and they don't know. I'm not sure what level they are.
Right.
So, I mean, the data that's being reported to us through this question is not reliable.
Or suspect, yes.
At best.
Trey, you bring up a good point, but I do think there are quite a few students who do know, that information. And my institution does look at these non-cognitive questions as part of our review process, in addition to the socioeconomic status. And it's a big one for us, especially when we see income levels 200,000 plus, and the mom and or dad has no high school. I mean, come on. You've just, in essence, called into question what it is your parents really do for a living. I mean, those are the kinds of things where but at the same time, we also want to make sure we also define first gen very differently. I mean, our identification as first gen is, a lot of institutions define it based on, did your mom or dad graduate? And we look at first gen as, did your parents ever go to college? So it's not about graduating, it's did they ever go to college? So in that case, I'd be interested in trying to keep some of the current options, definitely making it required, because I think that's a huge piece, but keeping some of the options, but tying in the yes, they graduated, no, they whatever, seeing how that's an option there, or even maybe expanding upon to say some high school, or no high school, some college, bachelor's, college degree, whatever the case may be, however we want to name that, but still give the options for institutions to have, for the student to choose whichever the existing options are for them. Because for us, it's very rich data that we look at. We look at that for not just our freshmen, but our transfer population. As we get additional scholarship opportunities on our campus, we need to be able to have that data as best as we can to say this is what the students have reported. So this is what, in essence, what's legitimate until we are told differently.
As Jeff has gone through that, and I appreciate that explanation, I think as you look at it from a 4-year perspective, we're looking at it over here as a 2-year perspective. That data is inconsequential to what we're doing. So therefore, maybe speaking a little out of turn for all of my 2-year brethren, I would say that the 4 years need to steer this discussion more and make sure that it captures what you need it to, because it's really not an important data to what we are doing for our students.
So I have 2 items after that. The first would be, if you did a yes/no, and if the answer was yes, it goes into the categories. Would that help? Okay. And then my second question would be, and remember, I'm new to this, in your particular situation, would there be some way, Jeremy, in the discussions for combining apps, that the logic flows questions for a 2-year application versus a 4 or grad?
Well, and I tell you, the reason I leaned forward, I was actually saying let's do one or the other, because when we were talking about adding a question, basically, Jeff, for you, seems like it was getting more complicated to me. So I'm like, well, don't do that. But if we do the yes or no, and then from there it breaks out to the question, I think that's fine. And as far as we're concerned, I'm going to steal from Daryl here. We just don't pull the data if we don't need it. You know,
map it in, yeah.
leave it
Yeah.
there, and we just won't ever map it. There's a lot of things on the app that I don't map, just because they're not required, and I don't need them, and I don't need it junking up my system.
Now, I will tell you in reference to that we have been doing the same thing, but we are now getting to the point because of the reporting requirements that keep changing on a daily basis that we have decided we're going to start pulling in everything and having it in a repository, right? But the actual data that we're using will be pulled out.
Right, and that's what we do. I mean, we don't delete
Gotcha.
anything.
Okay.
We don't leave things on the server. Everything is pulled down, but only certain things are mapped to fields we're using.
Okay.
And everything else is held out in whatever
right.
land it's sitting at in.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try to recapture this conversation and say that what I'm hearing is that somebody is interested in making a motion to make this a required question on the application with the amendment that could be that it exists, stays, well, if it stays the same, that's no need for an amendment. Amendment to change it to a yes-no dichotomous question, or an amendment to change it to a yes-no that then feeds into a spectrum or paradigm description.
So moved on the last part.
So moved on the last part. Is there a second?
Yes, no, and moves into
Description,
whatever.
yeah.
Description.
I second that.
All right. Any other discussion on that item? Very good. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Discussion on students' preferred phone number. This one, and I apologize, I'm going to have to pull up the application as we're talking about this. Do you remember this one, Jose? I don't remember this one.
Yes, I think this one is, there's not a determination or designation of a student telling the institution that this is the preferred number for them to use. Right now, institutions call the primary number, and then it might be a cell phone, it might be the parent's cell phone. So it's getting that communication from the student. I think that was the issue with this one. There's not a designated way to tell us
What type of phone it is?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm looking at the application right now, and under phone numbers, there's a primary phone, which is required, a primary phone type, which is required, which is home, work, or cell, and then an alternative phone and alternative phone type. So, yeah, I'm not sure.
I think maybe it's the changing primary to preferred phone number.
Okay.
Or, yeah.
Yes, that does make some sense. Thinking of the logic of what is the difference between a primary and a preferred. Where do I want to be called, or what do I consider my primary phone might be my home phone. I would prefer to be called on my cell phone. So that's an item that was requested from the constituency. Does anybody have any conversation, question, discussion on that item?
So we're just talking about changing the wording on the actual question to saying no longer ask for primary, but just said preferred phone number.
Yes.
I don't have an issue with that.
It's number 12.
Number 12 on the application.
I move that we do it.
I think it's easy.
One, making sure we've got this right. The question is about primary or preferred, but once they answer that question, the drop-down box has what type of phone, whether it's cell.
That's already exists.
Home, right, that's the drop-down. But so we're just talking about the question.
Yeah.
Labels required also?
The label, yes.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
It's required.
Okay.
I second the motion. We just had
Thank you, Rita.
that problem actually. So
Very good. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed?
All you're asking for is the textual change from primary to preferred and leave alternate.
Yes, sir.
Could I expand? I mean, I'm in agreement with all that, but could I expand the discussion on telephones for one other thing?
No.
No.
As long as you don't talk about address.
Okay, we won't talk about. Hazel's not here. I don't know for sure on this because I haven't checked it myself, but it was reported to me that our IT department is doing some cleanup and conversion of phone numbers, and there's a problem with too many digits and dashes in there. Do we have anything that restricts how students put in the phone number, like the area code and things like that? Is there anything that...
We currently ask them to include their area code and not to put in any dashes or anything, parentheses. There's a little text that says numbers only, no dashes, dots or parentheses. Please include your area code.
Okay, but do we have anything that prevents them from doing that?
Like it won't let them add a dash. That's an invalid key.
I'm guessing there's an audit there, but we'd have to try it out.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm looking at the A&M sample app. It won't let me do that.
You're asking if it will not allow you to put that in?
Right, because my IT department is telling us that we've downloaded some numbers that...
it'll allow you to put it in.
Well, that's what I'm asking. Even though it says on the instructions don't do it,
right?
Can we do something that will prevent them from doing it?
But there's only a certain amount of characters that'll fit in that deal, so that if you put in a dash, that last number that you're going to hit is not going to be inputted.
That seems that wouldn't be difficult to audit that if we.
And that's what I'm saying. My IT department in doing this conversion is telling me we've got a lot of invalid numbers out there.
Yeah.
Because
it's
of that.
allowing them to submit bad data then.
Correct.
Yeah.
That is correct.
We'll take a look at that, and that's not difficult to fix if that's indeed the case.
That is all. Thank you.
Other discussion on preferred phone number? Okay. Priority recommendation of changes for the application, agenda item number 9, to talk about the recommendation for changes for the application for the next application cycle. We'll start with the subcommittee proposed changes. And from your conversations from your subcommittees, if I could just have any kind of reiteration of items that came from that committee that we need to put forward for changes on the application.
Ethan, the only thing we're going to have is going to be dealing with the dual credit, and I don't know how to put a label on that because we don't know what the work's going to be until the conversation happens with.
And that's okay. That one still stays in subcommittee for determination, so that's quite all right. An example would be the piece about the T-Rex request from an application to T-Rex for transmission of transcript. And so that one's, for example, we'll call it the T-Rex subcommittee, and that's already under consideration and review and work. But if there's anything that we don't have, I just wanted for the minutes to make sure that we covered everything from each of the subcommittees.
I think we have the T-Rex API, the scholarship statement.
Ethan, I wanted to just mention, to go back to what your example about I call it the pinging of the T-Rex system when an applicant, and I mentioned this in our subcommittee meeting yesterday, and I know Tim heard this, but just for folks who weren't there, I think that we need to create some sort of mechanism for the student to be aware of the fact that they still have to provide a release from the school, to have the transcript coming from the institution. Because one of the concerns that was brought up is most high school students are under the age 18, and so mom and or dad typically have to release their transcript, and most schools do just a blanket release, not release from school by school, meaning you don't have to release the transcript out each time. But I do think to protect our high school counselors and our high schools, if you will, that piece of just the releasing of that, some sort of notification, meaning the schools, because the fear is that the school will see this request from T-Rex and think that it's met, and they can send it through. But I'm just concerned about the legality of the possibility that this may run down if records are released from school to college and there's not been a release from that student's parent.
That's a very good question. The implied consent is definitely there with the application, but you raise a very good question, and I don't necessarily know the answer to that.
I think part of it is, I guess, the implementation and education and engaging with the people at the high schools who will actually be fulfilling this. That my understanding is it's kind of taking the place of the student walking in and manually requesting something. But whatever happens at that school still needs to happen. Some schools have their own processes as far as some charge fee, some don't. Some might ask for this waiver, and some might not. But making sure that the people on the receiving end of the request understand that the student has requested this, just like they would have walked into your office and requested it, and whatever your process is, your process. I don't know how best to handle the education of that in terms of that part of it. And then my understanding, and Jose, correct me if I'm wrong, is that once we make the request, then the TEA is going to take over some email communication with the student. So they'll get they'll get an email from TEA saying, we got this request. It's in such and such a status. And if there needed to be any further involvement on the student's part or notification of the student as to where the request is, that the TEA would be handling that.
Yes, I think, yes. We had that conversation yesterday, that would be in partnership with the TEA, and that it would be, I use the term probably incorrectly, handshake in terms of giving the request to the TEA for that then to be a part of their process with their constituents.
And that may be that we just need to remind TEA as a disclaimer to say, please make sure that you have secured parental release of whatever, because that at least points to the fact that we've mentioned that to the student, and the due diligence is from the part of the request for the record to be released.
And we could certainly, within Apply Texas, we will know whether the request through the API to TEA went through successfully, and we could certainly make that part of the messaging upon submission of that transcript request that it went through, and then we could add, with y'all's help, if you wanted any text, please go see your counselor or follow up with or whatever. We could add that to the text of the message at that point. And that would be something that we would want is our ongoing conversation as we implement this to actually see what's the best way for it to work on the part of the student.
Definitely.
Yeah, we would have to have TEA's involvement in that before the high school could send us a transcript, because that goes back to the issue of authentication of the applicant. Just because somebody goes on Apply Texas and says, I'm applying for admissions to a Texas higher education institution, and then Apply Texas sends a notification to that high school, there's still no verification of who that applicant is initially. So
I think the API itself, it will have a couple of data fields that will use to authenticate that person. So if there's no match, then the student will have an email from TA saying, hey, there's something wrong with this, go see your counselor. So there is that little, it's very small, but it's that verification, that authentication built into the API.
But that, again, is coming from Apply Texas. So, if somebody puts in a bogus name in a bogus high school, which might actually be a high school, but they didn't actually go there, we're gonna process the application and send the request, to TEA, and then that would have to be handled on that end, so.
That's a good discussion and definitely something for consideration as we complete that project. I don't know if we talk about that was perhaps an MOU with TEA that we need to have on that process.
No.
Okay.
It's all built into the API.
Okay, fantastic. Any other subcommittee report for items to be considered for the transition from the next application development? Yes, Cheryl.
We had that last part of the scholarship app. I didn't hear that reiterated about the column.
Yes, the
Scholarship
addition of a
app
column.
Call it, well, that and the application independence is what I'm going to call it. Okay, hearing no other subcommittee pieces in there, I think we must have already captured everything else.
The address cleaning software.
Address cleaning software.
I don't know if that came out of, we did mention that in one of the subcommittees.
Yes.
I think that's been on the table and at this point assumed to be one of the priorities to be discussed and voted on. But you're right, though, Jose. We did actually discuss that in the technology committee, I think. At least it was mentioned.
Excellent. Thank you, Jose. Okay, proposed changes from any of our discussion items today that we did not miss or we did not discuss. Gentlemen.
Ethan, I have a question for Tim. In our last meeting, this is old business, and we didn't have an old business section. In our last meeting, we had a discussion about out-of-state, a student who's a Texas resident but went to an out-of-state high school, and you were going to look at that to see if the logic was because they were getting hung up. Did you get a chance?
I did get a chance to look at that, and I'm not. I think I'd want some examples. I remember it had to do with the 36-month thing, and whether you were in Texas, and for people especially, like for example, you live in Texarkana, right, and you live on the Arkansas side, but you're I don't remember the exact example. You live on the Arkansas side, but you go to school because your mom teaches on the Texas side or something like that. We have not found an error in the logic at this point. So we can continue to look at that and would continue to look at it, and that could be done kind of outside of the priorities set for development for this cycle, because I would consider if it's a bug, we need to discover it and fix it. If it's not a bug, then it would be something that we could look at making a change, which probably would involve some people from the committee, depending on how big a change it is. Did I obfuscate that decently?
Yeah, it was well done. Yes, I think that's correct. And Jeremy, if you have any examples that you've run across, please share them with Tim.
We do have the one that Jose forwarded to all of us last time, and that's because this isn't affecting me. This came from another school, and so that's the only example I have. Is the one he sent to me.
Brought in for that example, and it's been a while, but I think I'm remembering correctly. We brought in our residency expert from UT Austin, and she didn't think that there was an error in the way the data came through. That it looked like it sent. I'll have to go back and look at that, but I
don't think we were questioning that it shouldn't flag them to say there's a problem, but the problem was that it stopped them from finishing the app altogether.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, once it realized there was a problem, it went and it stopped, wouldn't let them go any further, and there was no way for the student to, without lying, to answer the question.
Yeah. So you wanted it to let them to kind of acknowledge that there appears to be some sort of possible discrepancy, but allow them to continue.
I think so.
Okay, I can take a look at that, and if it's, we can add that to the list, for this time. It sounds like it's a correction in flow that under this circumstance. So I may get back to you if I can on the example.
I want to make sure we're not kicking people out of applying to one of us just because there seems to be a problem. It's not lining up with our typical logic,
right?
And because most of us have done away with paper apps, so that's the only way we got to get them in.
All right, thank you, Jeremy. Any other proposed changes from discussion items?
So I have a continuation of one that we talked about, but it's sort of a different piece, and it deals with. And I know I just said I'm not going to talk about address, but this is not dealing with that specifically. And again, it's a request from one of the four-year schools, and it deals with the field for apartment number in the mailing and permanent address, and the field for an apartment number in the physical address. And this institution is getting a lot of returned mail because either it's not there or it's just not asking for it. And let me zip through this. And the request is really just to ask that the institution would like to request Supply Texas consider adding a field for apartment number to the address questions. And Tim, I don't know if that's currently there or not there, or maybe we can make it more prominent.
There are two address lines. There's not a specific one for apartment, I believe.
Right.
That's not the case.
In the application item, question number 10 is permanent address, a required question. Question number 11 is a physical address, which is current street address where you reside if different from your permanent address. And then there's question number 13, an emergency contact, which is required. Emergency contact has street address line 2, and apartment as a field that can be filled out.
Right.
And item 10 and 11 just have street address line 2.
So it's almost like question 13 is asking for what we need,
right.
But questions 10 and 11 don't have that same formatting. So, I mean, at some time the fields could be blank if it's the house or not an apartment. But on 10 and 11, we're just not asking for the apartment number, and I think that's where institutions are having return mail, because we're mailing to the mailing/permanent address, and it does not include, we don't ask for the apartment number, they don't include it, so mail's getting returned.
It's interesting to me that in the emergency it specifically asks for apartment. That's pretty unusual out in the world. When you put apartment, I live in an apartment, so I put it all the time on the second one. But one suggestion possibly would be simply, you notice there's some explanatory text out to the side, and you could just say, something to the effect of include apartment number if relevant, or something like that on that second line to tell them that's where the apartment should go.
I think what happened when this latest revision on the addresses was done, maybe there was some miscommunication or someone just got a little confused, because if you go back and look at the printed applications, which show us what was existing electronically before we combined everything, 10 and 11 on the printed applications have the apartment, and 13 does not. So I think when they tried to make things match, they got it switched. Because I'm looking at the printed ones right here, and I can bring those over there and show you, Tim.
And while Tim, I agree that blue text or green text, whatever we're calling it, off to the side gives them the information they need to fill out, I think we're dealing with a generation where it's really keying in data and hitting the tab button, and that's how they complete their application. We've had some data errors where students are choosing the first option on some things, and it's not correct. So I think if we just allow that apartment,
Take a look at that. Yeah, thanks.
give it more visibility, if you will, they'll know, hey, we really want you to put your apartment number here if you live in an apartment, because I don't think they're going to read the text off to the side. While we did that, hopefully to give them some information, I think the reality is students are trying to get to this application as fast as possible.
Do you think,
unfortunately,
that do you think that the model and the emergency contact is the best one, where you've got two separate address lines and then another line for apartment?
Yes. I mean, we're specifically saying apartment, and that's when you tell us your number. I mean, and if they can't fill that out, then I don't know. There's not much hope for them at all. I mean, I'm not to be a jerk, but I mean, if they don't know that's what we're asking for, then come on.
And I'm looking.
Jeff Fuller, University of Houston.
Come on. Hang on, if you'll bear with me, I'm actually looking at the file fields, and there is, we already have a field on the file for apartment, both for the permanent and the preferred address. So I don't know, it was there at one time. Whether it ever appeared on the app, other than it's apparently Daryl has found a smoking gun. And the reason I look is because it's a bigger deal to add fields to the file and all of that. And right. I would think that maybe we'll have to take a look at whether it's in the EDI already and just not being filled. But it looks like there's a place for it already on the file. Yeah, so adding it wouldn't be difficult.
I'm looking at the a copy of the app from I guess the PDF, not the PDF, but the version on the Apply Texas site, not the printed app, but a completed app, and 10 and 11, there is no apartment number, but 13, they've filled one in.
Which is, it's interesting that it's different.
Yeah, that's what I was pointing out, but on an older version,
right,
that was reversed.
Right.
It had the apartment numbers on 10 and 11 and not on 13.
Well, my sense of it, and I always have to look back over my shoulder when I'm talking for the technical team, but it looks like the fields on the file for it, adding it would be relatively easy. We'll be changing the EDI because we do every year anyway, so it looks like it would. I'm going to suggest that if you want that changed to where all three addresses say address 1, address 2, apartment, that's doable and would not be a big change.
I would like to point out, though, when we were taking them as paper, I did have one student submit the apartment. He actually put the name of the apartments that he lived in, like Mountain Village Apartments. So.
And you could say, and the paper one I think said apartment number.
I was going to say you may need to put apartment number.
Yeah, okay, not the name of the complex. So yeah, I think the contact just says apartment. So address 1, address 2, apartment number. Does that sound reasonable?
I think that is a very good way to approach it.
Okay.
Yes.
That's right. I heard it.
Any other proposed changes on discussion items that we've had this morning? There's a request to rephrase parental information. Jose, I'm not sure if I know which one that is.
That might have. Did that come from me? That might be one of the things that this came from the technical team as a result. Just was that a lot of the parental information throughout the app talks about father and mother specifically, and we're running into same-sex parents, and so I think that maybe I don't know that there's been questions but I would think there will be, and we might want to get out ahead of that. I don't know exactly how to do it, but parent 1, parent 2, whatever you want to do. But there's through the education level, income, they're always referred to as father and mother throughout the app. So I'm just bringing that up for discussion.
That's a very good question, and I'll open that up to the committee.
I would recommend that we table that until legislation so forces us to address it.
I'll second it.
Okay. There's been a request to table that conversation. Any other discussion? Very good. We'll bring that back up at our next meeting. The last item on the agenda under the recommendations for changes to the application involves changing the essay topics.
I have sent if you're ready for me. I have sent that out through TACRO and have about 15 responses back so far, and everyone is very appreciative of it, by the way, so thank you.
Cheryl, I just sent it out on the TACAC listserv about an hour ago as well. So,
are they coming back to you? Or
they're coming back to you.
Oh, isn't that?
Yeah, they're coming to you. Just because a lot of counselors have asked when the essay is going to be completed for next year, and so I just said I took your email that you sent to TACRO and then cleaned it up a little bit and sent it out to the TACAC listserv.
What? What? Yeah. Yeah, what was...
No, I mean the formatting.
What was wrong with the format?
Nothing was wrong with the formatting.
How'd you clean it?
Anyway,
thank you.
So you'll be getting feedback from that as well.
Yes, thank you. I think I didn't recognize some of those names, so maybe they've started coming already. So, thank you.
Let me provide some historical context to this conversation. At our last meeting, we discussed the possibility of changing the essay submission portion of the application because those essay questions had not been updated probably since they were first put in place. And so that was, Cheryl is among some of the constituent members who were actively campaigning for that change and started to a grassroots campaign to change application essay questions. And
essay A and B. This
essay
is too.
A and B
This
to
is not-
maintain SAC the way it exists. And so she has some information from what I'm going to call an ad hoc committee on essay changes to the essays A and B for the Apply Texas Common Application. And so we have started that process. And as we started that process, it is important to make sure that we are appealing to as broad a constituency as possible and that we involve as many people's voice in this conversation. And so Jose recommended that we try to extend that committee's participation beyond just its original membership, which was a couple of institutions. And so now we have put this information out on the TACRO listserv. Thanks to Cheryl and thanks to Jeff for putting that on the TACAC listserv for solicitation of comment from those groups of professionals in those associations. And then Jose, and I think this is a very good recommendation, is that we try to make sure that we have some student voice on this conversation. So we will try to find a student or two to participate in the conversation as well and review those the essays for the application. So my recommendation would be that we host one ad hoc committee with all of this information gathered, perhaps on a conference call, that would allow for us to have a open conversation and dialogue about those informations, and then we return at the next meeting with the recommended essay topics for topics A and B.
What I'll do as well is, and I had started doing this, is summarize the feedback underneath each question, and then try to take that feedback and propose an edited question, and then submit that to the group, if that's what you would like. Mm-hmm. I don't know about a student. I mean, I can get one of my students.
I think that any of us could probably help provide a student, and so perhaps as we look at the ad hoc committee, we ask that one or two students from those member institutions be a part of that conversation.
Okay.
That's
I volunteer a high school student. Do you want a high school student?
I think Pilar might know somebody.
And an Advise Texas mentor also, because they're helping the students as well.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Very good. And so if we'll make sure we keep them on the ad hoc committee.
You have the information, right, Pilar, because I sent it to you specifically.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Hit it.
Yes, ma'am.
Fantastic. So that will be something for our next meeting as well, after we've had one more meeting with that group.
Okay.
Are there any other items for the committee to consider today as part of our regular business?
The date of next meeting.
The date of next meeting. Let's talk about the date of our next meeting. In terms of timeline, Tim, what's the most efficacious time for you to have a finalized meeting for project prioritization for your work on the you and your team's work for the application.
Remind me, some of you, I'm looking at Cheryl, who knows, who've been through this cycle a few more times than I have. We could, if we typically, is it February that usually that meeting takes place, late January? Yeah, and I think that's a decent, that still gives us a good amount of time for our development cycle for this year. And so I would say, yeah, by no later than February 15th, probably no earlier than January 15th, somewhere in there if possible. That would give us time to do the research we need to do and contact any of y'all. Anything after March would start to, now there are certain things I think that we kind of understand we're moving forward on, that we're not waiting for clarification on or whatever. It's more a matter of what the committee wants to prioritize. Some of the bigger projects we've been talking about, address cleaning, the T-Rex, we're moving forward on those, not only because we can feel the support of the committee, but also we know that it's a priority for the coordinating board. And so we'll be moving forward on those. So basically any time in February, probably the first part of February or the last week of January would be good for us.
Can we look at dates after MLK?
Yes.
Because that would get most of us through the first day of school, and our presidents are not very happy with most of us being out prior to that. And so it'd be nice to at least get beyond that, so we're not feeling like we're rushed or missing out on something.
Yeah, I
people are
agree.
missing.
We actually start the week before MLK this year, so yeah, anything that we would do needs to be after that holiday.
That's the week of the 21st, the third week of January. So if we look at something after that period of time, we're talking about the fourth week in January, second, third week of February. February 1st is a Friday.
First week of February is SACRO, so I don't know how many of y'all attend SACRO. But
I was going to recommend just if we can go with the 15th if it was possible.
Of February?
Yes.
Yeah, and that, I think pushing it into February is good for us, because if y'all are really, really busy until late January, then you might not be as available for any feedback that we might need in terms of our own estimates. So, any mid-February maybe?
I like the 15th if we can get the room.
There is an international students deal on the 14th and 15th in San Antonio. That might, I don't know if it provides conflict for me. It may not for everybody else, but I mean, just there is something going on. I can't remember who it's through, but
how about the 12th or the 13th?
How about the 13th?
13th is a Wednesday.
We can do midweek. This was midweek.
will subcommittees meet as well on?
Did you like the format of the way we handled the meeting this last time?
I did.
Okay, then we may need to do that. I think we can be flexible with space. I mean, the most important thing is the boardroom. Let's worry about the boardroom.
The 13th is available.
If we need to worry about space for subcommittee meetings, we can be more creative about that. That's all right.
Yeah. Or could it all be done on one day, or do you want to go 2 days? Suppose if you have morning subcommittees and afternoon meeting, if you can get all the subcommittees in the morning, or is that too much?
I personally prefer the model that we use this time. I think it was much more productive doing the subcommittees the day before this meeting.
And for cost, it's actually better to have them split into 2 days because it's still only one night stay. If we go to all day, then I'll have to come in the night before and probably stay the next night. So, and that's just for those of us that travel. I mean, it sounds good, but that doesn't actually make it that much easier.
And for us that live in a different time zone, it makes it difficult.
You're always in a different time zone.
It's hard to get the flight.
Yeah. It's not hard getting a flight. You just have to spend a lot of time in the airport.
Okay, tentatively, we're looking at the 12th and 13th, barring the compatibility or in terms of scheduling the boardroom for the meeting. If Jose if he confirms and reserves that, then we'll go with those dates. If we need to change it up a day or back a day based on availability, that was what we'll probably do. Okay?
Is it a problem having the meeting later rather than 9, having it in the afternoon? Is that a problem with people getting out? The reason I ask is that as long as, I really like this model too, and I liked being in the subcommittees, and as long as we don't have a lot of late 11th hour requests, then there's not much time for us to do any research or respond to how much change it would take. So if we had a Tuesday committees, and then I would have maybe late Tuesday afternoon and Wednesday morning to talk to my team if I needed to, for our discussion of priorities, it would help us. But I don't want to step on people's plans to get out if they really need to get out.
I think that's a valid request, and that it would change the way I travel, but I'm willing to do that.
Well, I think it's a valid request, but I think that still runs us back into, well, then just do it all in one day. And because for some of us, if we go to evening meetings for this, then we may be looking at overnight stays.
Sure, but if under our current format, day one being subcommittee meetings, that gives day 2, the AM portion of day 2, an opportunity for Tim's team to evaluate the requests.
And the alternative to that would be to do all the subcommittees on the morning of day 1. As long as they shut down by 1 or 2, then we would have the rest of that day to do our deliberation.
So,
and then
You could move them like from 10 to 2 instead of 8.
You could
still travel maybe earlier.
That's true.
Yeah. Like the people that have to travel the furthest later in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Subcommittees 10 to 2, and then this meeting.
That would work for us.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Okay. We'll work on, the only day that we'll really need to sure is the board meeting. Otherwise, we'll do whatever we need to do, Jose, for other meetings. We can meet at Luby's next door. Is there any other business for the Apply Texas Committee today? See none, I'd be happy to entertain an adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much. Safe travels.